Let's just wait for it to begin recording. Okay, kia ora koutou katoa. Welcome to our online hearings for the Newtown to City bike and bus improvements. It's really nice to have you today. In the room here, we've got Councillor Fitzsimons, Councillor Day and myself, Councillor Paul, and online we've got Councillor Matthews, Councillor Young, Councillor Calvert. So you've got 5 minutes if you're speaking as an individual or 10 minutes if you're speaking as an organisation, and just asking all participants to be respectful of staff and the work that they've put into these into this process in their submissions. So we're going to start off with Amy Louise Turner, who I can see there. Amy, you've got 5 minutes, and if you want questions, you'll have to fit that into the 5 minutes. And councillors, just use your hand up function if you want to ask questions. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Kia ora koutou, ko Amy Liuaho. So I'm very happy to be speaking to you guys about the bike lanes. I think this is like a really important issue for me. So I'm like primarily a cyclist, like that's my main mode of transport. So I'm very much in favour of the bike lanes. Like I say, I'm like mainly a cyclist, and I think also for the good of the environment, it's really important, and just to kind of make our spaces kind of more livable for everyone. So whilst I'm happy to ride in traffic, I do definitely recognise the need to kind of make changes so it's accessible to more people. So I'm really happy that Wellington City Council is kind of engaging with the public through this consultation process. And I do think it's important to do this kind of thing and actually get it right, you know, kind of to if we're going to make these changes and put in these bike lanes, to kind of make sure that it actually works for everyone. So with that in mind, that whilst I am very much in favour of having more bike lanes and making the city more bike friendly, I do think there are a couple of kind of key concerns that I have about the changes that kind of have been trialled thus far. So the first one is in relation to the merging lane in front of the hospital car park, kind of as you're going back towards the First Coast. So I think the way that it's being done at the moment is unsafe, because as it was before, you had the cyclist had ultimate control about the ultimate decision about whether or not to actually change lanes, and they could make that decision. Like if I'm cycling down, I can look and see if a car's coming, and if I think it's safe, I will move. If I don't, I'll stay where I am and keep out of the way of the traffic. With the merging lane, you then take the control out of the cyclist's hands and put it into the hands of the car drivers, which I think is unsafe, especially for less experienced cyclists who like might have like a kind of full sense of security from the bike lane, who kind of may not be looking enough at the other cars, and especially in like situations of like low light and things where, you know, car drivers may not be looking well enough. I just don't think that merging lane is safe, and I don't think that it improves anything to how it was without the bike lanes. I think with a bike just being on the side of the road, that was a safer situation than putting them in the middle of the road in the path of the traffic. So that's one of my concerns. The next one is in relation to the bus platforms. So I do recognise there's a lot of positives about the bus platforms, especially as I said, for less experienced cyclists, in that it kind of provides a more segregated route where they would feel safer. However, like not everyone is a less experienced cyclist. There are people like me on the road who are happy to ride in traffic, and I think for those people it kind of takes away like the right of way that you had on the road before the platforms were put in. And I just think that like if we want the city to be a more livable place for everyone, and for bikes to be like a mode of transport that everyone is happy to use, it needs to work for everyone, including people who are more confident on a bike. And I think by taking away the right of way and putting you in conflict with pedestrians, so I cycle down that route every day to work, and like obviously with the new ramps in place, like I am slowing down for pedestrians, but often when people are getting off the bus, they're not looking. Like if they were crossing the road, they would be looking to cross the road. Often when they're getting off the bus, they're just on their phones, and they're not really aware of bikes. And it's really, as a cyclist, I'm not happy with pedestrians just walking in front of me without looking. Like if I'm on a road and I'm like, obviously I'm looking for hazards and stuff, but you're not expecting people to just walk into your pathway like they do on bus ramps. Also, as a bus user, so I do, if it's bad weather, like I don't have a car, so if it's bad weather and I'm not on my bike, I will take the bus. As a bus user, I also don't particularly like stepping off the bus into the path of a cyclist. I'm going to stop there because I've just seen the 30 seconds left thing. And if there's any questions.
Awesome, Amy, Louise, thank you so much for your submission. I thought that was very clear. We don't have too much time for any questions just because we started off a little bit late, but your submission is really detailed, and we really appreciate you coming and talking to us today, so thank you.
Thank you.
Next we've got James William Barber. Kia ora, James. So you've got 5 minutes to speak to us, and you need to leave time in that 5 minutes if you'd like to answer any questions, if there are any. And I'll let you know in the chat when there's 30 seconds left. Thank you.
No way, thank you. Kia ora koutou, aka mihi kia koutou a te iwi o te rohine. E uaua, nā te mea kei te tua mo te mahuru Māori is kind of tricky because I'm taking part in mahuru Māori e tēnei wā, no reira ka kōrero e nā rau e roa. No reira ka tere, I'll be speaking both languages, so I'll try and be fast. Yeah, āhua pai te arapahi karanei, the ate arapahi, it's good, it's kind of good, it's very important. You all know why, ke te mohi o ke koutou. Nā te ao e whakamahana ana. We know that climate change is here, is real. Me whakawhiti nā tangata, ki nā pahi kara, nā pahi, mā raro. If people do need to move to walking, people need to move to bikes, people need to move to buses. We all know that it has to happen. E tahi nā raru, there are some problems. Ke te mohi o ke koutou, as you know already, to be honest. Main Street, he pai tērā, he pai o koutou whakautu. I think what has been proposed and I've seen on the website is a fairly good solution where you just move the cycle lane over whakawhiti tērā ki te Maui, moving that over to the left, adding some lights. He pai tērā. Ko te raro I taku tuhinga, the main thing I've mentioned, te taonga pahi ki te taha o Newtown kindergarten, the bus stop next to Newtown kindergarten, ki te pērangi koutou, ki te whakawhiti nā tangata, ki te pahi kara, like kawe mahi pēra, like that's right next to, if you want people to move to buses and stuff like that, removing a bus stop right next to a dentist, removing a bus stop right next to a fairly major kindergarten is probably not a good idea. Kei te marama o hea ha, I kind of understand why, probably lack space, and it's quite uaua ki te, you know, whakatue era, it's kind of a tricky thing to deal with. But if we can not remove bus stops near major points like that, he pai tērā, it would be great if we could not do that. Yeah, ko era te nuinga, that's sort of most of it. I guess mo te tahi mea no, one other thing, he pai ki te whakatue te whakapānui nā ramps. It would be great if the ramps, if you go in with the current system for bus stops, was the width of the bike lane or the bike lane on the bus stops, because it's a safety issue. If the ramp is not as wide as the ara at the bus stops or the ara of the paikara beforehand, that's a safety issue. You kind of need to have them the same width if you can. Kei te marama o he uaua tērā. I know it's difficult, but it's best if that it's the same width. Okay, ko tērā te mea? That's that.
Ka pai tō reo e hoa. Yep, ngā mihi o te wā o mahuru Māori. Does anybody have any pātai for James Barber or any questions? Ka pai, I think you were really clear. Ngā mihi e hoa, kia pai tō rā.
Ai, a koutou hoku.
Ka kite. Love it. Māori Language Month, whānau, it's great. So next we have got Bex Radford, and I think I can see, Bex there. Kia ora, Bex, you've got 5 minutes to speak to your submission, and you'll need to leave time for questions in that 5 minutes. If there are any, I'll let you know in the chat if there are questions, and I'll let you know in the chat when there is 30 seconds left.
Morena, I'm coming to you from my workplace, which is Good Nature. So we're up the top of Newtown. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer there, but I'm also coming to you as a relatively new Brooklyn resident. So learning to navigate my bike between Brooklyn and Newtown, learning to navigate my bike between Newtown and the city. And for me, you know, safety is really, really important as a cyclist, but also safety for all people, making sure that our pedestrians, our disabled community members, our public transport users all feel safe. And so I imagine there's some compromise there, but I think as a cyclist, I want everyone to feel safe in this space. But also as someone who leads a team and wants to make sure that my team, if they choose to cycle, feel really safe moving through this neighborhood. So already the mahi that's been done around the hospital, I think everyone feels like it's made a huge difference in terms of how safe we all feel, but fully supporting the kind of ambition of this next phase of mahi as well, as a boss and as someone who lives in this neighborhood. I think the other thing that I'd love to share with the team is one of the things, you know, practical stuff can make us feel unsafe as cyclists, but also people's attitudes, potentially people's attitudes behind the wheel can make us feel really unsafe as well. And so I would love for the council team to be keeping that stuff in mind as they're sort of building this infrastructure, rolling this infrastructure out. How do we make sure that the people behind the wheels of those bigger vehicles are doing everything they can and being mindful to kind of keep those of us who are less protected safe? And some of those yucky attitudes, you know, can be as harmful to us as bad infrastructure. That's it from me. Any patai from anyone sitting in the Zoom room?
Any patai? Oh, I think you've been really clear. Thank you so much for joining us this morning and for your submission. It was very clear, and hope you have an awesome day.
Awesome. Thanks, team.
Ngā mihi.
Thank you.
Cool. So next it says we've got, so Carol is rescheduling to a later time today. I'm wondering if we have Darren Young online. Okay, that's all good. We can.
Yeah, I think next up we have Dylan.
Okay, my run sheet's got Darren Young, but are they rescheduling?
Yes, they've rescheduled to later in the day. Yeah.
Oh yeah, cool, sweet. Okay, cool. Dylan, Haramai, you've got 5 minutes to speak to us about your submission.
Lovely. Thank you. Kia ora. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm really excited about these changes. I have a front-loader cargo bike and carry around my 5-year-old and 2-year-old. I'm often in this area on daycare drop-offs. That's where I've been this morning, in Newtown, and on to work or going to the zoo, cafes or shopping. I live in Brooklyn now and previously lived in Houghton Valley. Our public transport networks and cycling infrastructure need to be improved now to support the residential intensification changes that are coming. The more people you can move out of private cars now, the less gridlock you'll have in the future. There's not many other ways around it. I think the bus lanes should be all hours of the day, all the way from Newtown School to Courtney Place. This route is going to have light rail, so please signal the intention for this route. It's a huge opportunity now. This will also help improve bus reliability and punctuality, make public transport more appealing. As part of these plans, I think the U-turn facilities between Cambridge and Kent Terraces must be closed for safety reasons. People driving cars in a U-turn maneuver drive in a right lane, looking for a gap in a traffic to the left and needing to look in both directions for people on bikes. It won't be safe. People driving cars can use the traffic light controlled intersections or go around the basin. With the new cycle network as a whole, I hope there's thought given to all the details. For example, I think a cycle lane turning left into a cycle lane should be treated like a slip lane. We see that with car lanes, with main traffic lanes already. There's the same opportunity for cycle lanes, especially travelling south through that Adelaide-Ridderford intersection, for example. Also, other smart options, like where there's a cycle lane crossing across road traffic, please consider the use of smart sensors like used in Christchurch to automatically trigger the cross signals. I'm a bit disappointed about the intersection with Ridderford Street and Adelaide Road. I think it would be great to reconsider the allocation of space here to have the cycle lane as continuous as possible, or potentially give way road markings to help with the merge between the bus lane traffic and the cycle lane traffic. I've given an example of that in my submission where, Willis Street joins Customowski or something like that. There's similar Jervoisky. I get them mixed up. Again, I strongly support this proposal and look forward to it, and later joining Island Bay to the waterfront and the rollout of the full network as soon as possible. I want a future where my wife and kids are confident and safe to ride bikes around the city too. In a lot of ways, this isn't being built for people like me. It's being built for all of the people who have the inclination but are a bit timid at the moment. So that's all of the statement I have prepared. Any questions?
Kia ora, Dylan. Thank you so much for that presentation. We've got a question from Councillor Rush.
Oh.
Thanks, Dylan. So the vast majority of traffic movements in that area are from motor vehicles. So
yeah, at the moment, I looked at this fantastic photo from 1911 the other day, and it had two beautiful rows of trams and people on bikes. It was a spectacular photo. There's a few horse-drawn carriages too.
Things obviously progress. So what do you say to people who either don't have the inclination or simply are not physically able?
I think you're quite right. I think it has progressed backwards. I think we need better transport corridors through here to carry more people in more efficient ways, like we had previously, like we had 100 years ago. People who, that will free up more of the road corridor so that space is available for people to drive cars who actually need to. So people with mobility issues, people like my grandma is in a wheelchair. The buses and bikes help people get straight outside the door of a huge majority of places where people need to go. And it frees up the road space for other users as well.
So what do you say to people who would say that you can cycle and do that now? And if safety is an issue, of course, you've got a choice to take other transport.
Sorry, Sean, I'm just going to have to, cut off that questioning just because, Sean, Councillor Rush, your Wi-Fi is a bit laggy and you cut out in the middle of that question, but we don't have time for your last question, unfortunately. But there are many more opportunities for questions today, and
cool.
Hopefully
free up the road space, give more choices to more people, all those things. Love your work. Thank you very much. Please get it
awesome,
done.
Dylan. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cool. Have a great day. Next, we've got Joel Cosgrove. You've got 5 minutes to share your submission with us, and if you want to answer some partai, you just need to save some time within that 5 minutes for that.
Cool. Can you guys all hear me?
Yeah.
My work. Cool. You never know if these things. I just put in my submission. I mean, other people have put in like the stats and the details and stuff. I read your Patrick Morgans and whatnot, so I won't belabor that. I'm a Sparky. I've got a 3-year-old daughter, and when I'm not picking her up after daycare, I'm generally trying to bike for fitness, and I don't want to pay for parking in town. So, and so it's like, I guess I'm concerned about the environment. I'm a small R recreational cyclist. I'm the bare threshold for being a cyclist. I cycle, I'm not a cyclist. Not that any of them are bad. And then I guess I didn't really think about this sort of stuff till I went around the rest of the world. I spent a couple of weeks in Toronto, and they have a cycle network. And so I just hired a bike for, I think, $5 a day.
Oh, kia ora. Thank you, Joel, for your submission this morning. We've got a couple minutes there for questions. Does anyone have any? Oh, yep, Councillor Fitzsimons has got a question.
Hey Joel, thanks for coming in. I'm interested in whether you think it's realistic for people who are doing tradesman type roles like electricians, like you, to be able to bike around the city, because we often hear from people that that's just not a realistic concept. So you're an exception to that. Can you tell us about how that works and whether that could be something that we could see more widespread across the city?
Well, there was a guy set up, I think he just didn't have enough time, Turn Electrical, I think, where he was fully sustainable. He had a bike and he had an EV van, so he was entirely non-carbon based, whatever. Yeah, totally doable. It depends on the job. So, you know, there's times when we need when we need vans and we need a lot of gear, but if we're doing house calls and stuff, you know, I can put my gear in my backpack or on my panniers on my bike and travel around. Again, it's about that choice. So totally. I'd say a lot in my industry, a little hidebound by the way things have always been done, and that's both, you know, building, the way we build, the way we go about the building, waste. There's a lot of stuff there.
Awesome, thank you. And we've got one question from Councillor Rush.
Yeah, my dad's a builder, so that wouldn't work for him with all the tour and so on. But do you charge by the hour?
I'm an employee.
No,
I get charged out.
Would you embed the cost of your transport into the hourly rate?
I assume my employer would, but that's just the same as traveling around in van. I mean, to be honest, you can be quicker on bike around the central city, so it's all relative. If I'm going out to the Hutt Valley, I'm probably driving my van, but if I'm in town, then I'm, you know, biking is pretty reasonable as a choice.
Thanks, Joel.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Joel. That's all the questions for this morning. Thank you for coming in and speaking to us, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
You guys too. Good luck.
Thank you.
Next up, we've got Koi Fan. Kia ora, Koi. You've got 5 minutes to speak to your submission today. And if you want to answer any questions, you'll just have to leave a bit of time at the end to answer those if there are any. And we'll let you know when there are 30 seconds left to speak in the chat box. Thank you. Take it away.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Koi. I am a resident in Mount Cook, Newtown area. I'm a ratepayer. I have been living in Wellington for the past nearly 10 years now, and mostly living in the Newtown areas. And I think this Cycleways will severely impact me and my daily life. And I'm hopefully council will get on with it and install this cycleway. The bit between Rutherford and Main Street is amazing. It helped safety, increased safety for cyclists. It helped with bus lane. It should be more like this. And this is the most beautiful thing I've seen in the past 8 years living here. And council just have to get on with it and install it. We have run the submission. Nearly 2,000 people have said 70% of them are okay with it. And we just need to get on with it. It's a really important infrastructure to connect the railway station, the waterway, into Newtown, especially Newtown Hospital, which is the main workplace for many people who live around here. We need to provide them with the right infrastructure, safe infrastructures with low carbon emission to get to the workplace. And that's all. Thank you.
Kia ora koe, thank you for your submission this morning. Did anybody have any questions for Koi? Okay, it seems you've, oh, Councillor Rush.
Yeah, it just takes a little time, Madam Chair. So, what do you say to those businesses who are and there is already a decline in their business and maybe Newtown might
Sorry,
look a lot different without those shops and that sort of vibrancy they bring?
Sorry, could you repeat it again? Like it was really, the connection wasn't good, was cutting out.
Okay, this is not good. I might have to come into the office. I was just going to say, what do you say to those businesses who are losing revenue and some of which are already closing?
So I'm gonna say, let's say the car yard and the thing, we know for a fact that going forward, we're moving toward a low carbon emission. Business need to account for that and forecast it and to be able to adapt to the climate that we're going toward to and the goals of the city. Business should not hold the citizen of the city hostage and keep constantly providing unsafe infrastructure for other people to use. And most of businesses will have better traffic when there's more bike traffic going through, have improved businesses.
Okay, so that.
Sean, I'm just going to have to stop you
cars
there.
are actually selling all the EVs though, aren't they?
Sean, your internet is really bad. You might have to consider coming in because it's really lagging really badly.
Okay, thanks. I will.
Cool. Thank you, Koi, for your submission. Sorry about that. And yeah, have a great day. Thanks for joining us.
It's done good. Thank you very much, and hope you guys have a good day.
Thank you. Next, we've got Melanie Mcgrath joining us today. Melanie, you've got 5 minutes to speak to your submission, and if you'd like to answer any questions, just leave some time for that at the end of your submission, and we'll let you know in the chat when you've got 30 seconds left. Thank you.
Wonderful. Can you see me all right? And
yeah.
Okay, good. Hopefully you can hear me as well. For the team, my name's Melanie Mcgrath. I am a high school teacher and I've lived in Wellington all my life. And I'm here to say that I support the Newtown to City Cycleway wholeheartedly. I support it firstly as a new cyclist. I've taken up cycling really recently to cut my reliance on the fossil fuel industry and the fuel costs, obviously being an issue at the moment. For my health, to move my body in an enjoyable way, and for my happiness, it's really fun. Cycleways provide physical and emotional safety for cyclists. Physically being in a cycle lane means my body isn't on the line when I cycle. I can grow my confidence in a safe way, and if I make mistakes, my life isn't on the line. Emotionally, I'm safer too. As a plus-size woman, I'm able to go at my own pace without the ridicule of drivers assuming that I'm too slow, even on an e-bike. The creation of these cycleways and knowing that they'll be rolled out across the city has given me the confidence to get way out of my comfort zone and take up cycling. This time a year ago, I would never have guessed that I would own a bike and be commuting by bike. I firmly believe that if you build the infrastructure, the people will come, and this is why the cycleway is important. I support the Newtown to City Cycleway as someone with a brother that has a traumatic brain injury. Whilst this wasn't directly related to cycling, I know very well the life-changing impact that a brain injury can have on individuals and their families. The cycleway and others proposed in the Paniki Poniki project will save people's lives, their bodies and their brains from injury. Ever since my brother's accident, I think non-stop about how fragile our bodies are, and especially our brains. And since becoming a cyclist, this has been my #1 worry for myself and my loved ones. I believe that every cyclist that is cycling on Wellington roads now without cycle lanes are incredibly brave, and I believe they deserve infrastructure that will protect them. I support the Newtown to City Cycleway as a social studies and geography teacher as well. I've taught at Wellington High School for the last 12 years, and on a daily basis now, I'm faced with young people's anxiety surrounding the climate crisis. I'm faced with questions about what will happen and why governments and councils are so slow to act on what to them feels like an environmental apocalypse. Talking to my students about the future is getting harder and harder to do in a way that is focused on hope and not just on species loss, sea level rise, and government inaction. I've taught social studies for 12 years, as I said, and I've never seen such high levels of eco-anxiety in our students. Our kids are becoming depressed thinking about their futures. Obviously, when I'm teaching them, I'm not focusing on this stuff. I do teach from a place of hope, but that is getting harder and harder when the decisions that are being made are not obviously pro-climate. Not only are Cycleways climate action, but they are also a sign for the youth to be hopeful that the change we need is happening. Not just promises, but physical reminders in their built environment that people that hold power and influence, like you as city councillors, care about the future that they will inherit. I understand that some particular businesses and groups are worried about the impact this particular cycleway will have for them. And to that, I encourage you to remember the bigger picture here, and that is that our world is literally on fire. I also support the Newtown to City Cycleway as someone that has witnessed the congestion and increase in car ownership in our city firsthand. In 2017, I moved to Toronto in Canada. When I returned in 2019, it was noticeable that Wellington's roads had become more congested. I lived in Brooklyn in 2017, and I now live here again in 2022. And I can see the traffic where there wasn't any previously. For example, cars backed up on Ojeda Road in Brooklyn at peak times now. That never used to happen. Wellington doesn't have the luxury of growing outwards. As you know, we have confined space and we need to work with our physical environment. With the projected increase in our population, it doesn't make sense to not invest in diverse and sustainable ways to travel around the city. Not everyone is able and will be able to own a car due to space on the roads and parking at home, and bikes take up a whole lot less space. As our congestion issues get worse and the price of fuel increases, more people will be turning to alternative forms of transport like cycling. So we need to make this place a really attractive and safe place to cycle. And that is all I have to say. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Melanie, for that powerful submission. Councillor Matthews, did you want to ask your question? We've got a bit of flexibility.
Yeah, great, thank you. My question was, you're talking about the young people that you teach, Melanie, and just kind of wondering what we can do to support them to make better transport choices, including supporting young people to cycle to school.
It's funny you mentioned this. We've recently, I'm a geography teacher as well, and we're doing some geographic research around our school's carbon emissions. And what we found is that most students aren't the ones that have the problem with their transportation. They are very much on buses, on bikes. The things that we could do to support them to make those choices, just make it easier to get the bus, easier to have their bikes safe when they get to school, when they're traveling on cycleways, as I said before. That will incentivize even the least likely student to, ride a bike if we're all doing it, or if it's seen as a cool thing to do eventually. This will be a real change. But I would say it's not, a lot of the time, it's not our students that are the ones that are not making the right choices with transport. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool, and we've got a question from Councillor Calvert.
Thank you, Melanie, for your submission. One of the things is, and I noticed you're talking about the difference from 2017, I think it was that year to now. And I think one of the things that we've been facing, in particular since 2018, when Greater Wellington put in a new bus service, and it hasn't really gelled. I mean, it seems to be getting worse. I know we're getting a lot of complaints on the Pūroro route, and I know there's been a lot of students going from Pūroro to Wellington High. Have you experienced that much yourself or heard much about that? Because it just seems that people aren't using buses because they can't rely on them and are using the cars more.
I think it's a really toxic mix, to be honest. I think it's potentially, this idea about our bus services not being adequate, but also because of the pandemic. Like, I think a lot of people are choosing alternative transport because they know that that's, you know, a place of lots of breath, and not being able to keep themselves safe potentially. I think it's a complex issue. It's a whole range of things. It's not just, I don't think I would just blame the changes with Metlink. But yeah, we do need to do everything in our power to obviously make buses a mode of transport that people would choose over their cars as well as bikes. So it's everything. It's kind of this weird transition time. And I think not only are the cycleways really important, but investing in that public transport is as important. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melanie, for joining us this morning, and enjoy the rest of your day. Next up, we've got Melissa Wimsett online. So Melissa, you've got 5 minutes to speak to your submission, and if you wanted to answer any questions, you'd need to leave some time at the end of that 5 minutes for that.
Hi everybody, my name's Mel. I just thought I'd quickly say that I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone but myself. I am a person that works in Wellington Hospital, and I have also been an average user of Wellington Hospital over the last few months. I've just given birth to an 8-month-old, well, not just, but a while back. I just thought I would like to point out a few issues for me as somebody who's driven to the emergency department with a child, been in labour, and also works at the hospital. I think it's important to realise that Wellington Hospital is a tertiary level hospital that caters from everybody from the upper middle of the North Island to kind of the upper south of the upper South Island. We also do a variety of different surgeries, procedures, cancer treatments, and options. And I feel like we've recently just taken away the main free car parks that some people have to visit their whānau and their relatives and everything. I also think that in this COVID era, we can't always expect some of our really sick patients to be able to take public transport in this area. In this recent time, we've also, people don't have any other options. It's not like Kinapura Hospital is a hospital people can go to if they need a heart surgery. They can only go to Wellington, and that's if they live in areas further north and abroad. I also think that, like, I'm not opposed to the bike lane, I'm opposed to the design and the way it is. I think if we put the bike lane one lane over and it would be on Adelaide Road, you would take away the awkwardness of ambulances and women in labour driving into the emergency department and having to look out for people on bikes, which they can be incredibly fast at times. I think it's also important to realise that public transport isn't always reliable, so it's not exactly like, oh, don't worry, there's a bus that can take you to the hospital, you don't need to worry about car parking. Because for me to get to the hospital, it would take about 2 hours on public transport each way. I just think that sometimes it feels like we're catering specifically to some people in a certain suburb and not actually thinking about the wider area of people actually it will affect. I'm more speaking just in terms of the hospital. I think the whole idea as a whole is absolutely fine. I just think if anyone's actually driven trying to get to the hospital in an emergency situation, it can be incredibly stressful. I'm free for questions.
Thank you, Mel, for sharing your submission with us today. We've got a question from Councillor Matthews.
Thanks, Mel. I really appreciate you taking the time. My question is that a lot of the traffic, most of the traffic through there would be people not going to the hospital, would be people going about their business and commuting and things like that. So if we can make choices easier for other people and get them out of their cars, does that not achieve sort of the same thing in a different way?
I think
yeah.
Does to a certain extent, but I also think for me the main issue is along Rutherford Street at the start, where you've got a bus lane interlinking with a bike lane interlinking, and you're trying to turn into the emergency department. There's not a lot of signage. I just wondered if it would be easier if we moved it one street over onto Adelaide Road for the cyclists, because it is a quieter road. It's not as busy as the main street. That way you can still have the buses driving. And then it could interlink back after the weird corner where there's 12 intersections from the countdown to the dairy to the hospital.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Matthews.
Oh, cool. Thank you, Mel. It doesn't look like there are any more questions, but we really appreciate you coming in and having a cordial with us this morning. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you. And finally, before we have a short break for morning tea, we've got Lane McLeod here. Kia ora, Lane. You've got 5 minutes to speak to your submission, and then if you wanted to answer some questions, if there are any, just leave some time at the end of that 5 minutes. Thank you.
Kia ora, Tamitha. Kia ora, everyone. I'm Lane McLeod. I'm a fourth year medical student at the University of Otago in Wellington. So I daily commute to Wellington Hospital from Mount Cook, where I live, and the path I travel is exactly the length of the cycleway and the bus improvements that are being put in. And so I have been trying more as much as I can to cycle to the hospital. Great exercise, the very straight, direct route, but as anyone knows, it's terrifying. It's so scary. On one hand, you've got cars going along a section of State Highway 1, and on the other hand, you've got big buses, which do not allow a lot of space for a little person on a bike. And I want to be able to make it to the hospital on my bike and not in an ambulance. And especially when you do long days where you've been in theatre all day and you're just exhausted, you just want to focus on cycling safely home and not have to worry about like mortal peril. I full-heartedly support these changes to our network. I think it's a great stepping stone to be able to create a cohesive network throughout this entire city so that you can just access it anywhere safely. I think it's going to be exceptional for having that increased reliability on our buses, because very often around 3 p.m. or even in the morning in peak, if you're going the opposite direction, there is still traffic. There is still traffic going both ways on Adelaide Road from Redford to the Basin Reserve. And sometimes you'll see, oh, there's no traffic going away from the city, but we're in gridlock going to the city at 4 p.m. So I really agree with the extension and solidification of those bus lanes along that main route. My main critique on this, as we've already seen with the section that we have done on Redford Street near the Main Street end, that we do need to have protected cycleways the entire way. That strip of cycleway that you just have to battle it out with the cars turning left is not worth the 3 parks or so that have been saved. And I think we should take that learning and apply it for the rest of it, especially northbound cycling along Redford across that Adelaide-Redford intersection, because the current plans have you just merging with traffic, and you're merging with 2 lanes of traffic, one turning left, one turning right, and you have to be in the left turning traffic if you want to go straight. And that's just as dangerous as it is now. And that traffic intersection is stressful if you're in a car, let alone on a bike. And so I think it's worth considering. I recognize these limitations with street size, but absolutely cycleways should be protected and separated the entire way, because we want to encourage people to actually participate in these for all sorts of reasons: climate reasons, health reasons, accessibility reasons, for reducing congestion. If we don't have continuously safe cycleways and we have cycleways protected where it's convenient and we leave still dangerous places, it's still a dangerous commute. And I think that would be worth considering in this process. If I as a commuter are frustrated that this still hasn't happened. I keep thinking if all of this drama hadn't happened, I would be cycling safe to the hospital. But I really appreciate the work that's being done to this. I think that's all I had to say on that. Thank you.
Hi, Lane. Thank you for sharing your corridor with us this morning. Does anybody have any questions for Lane? It looks like you've been really clear with us this morning. Thank you very much. Hope you have an awesome day. So that brings us to the end of our first morning slot. So we're going to have a break until 10:45. So see you guys back in 20 minutes. Kia ora everyone, welcome back to our Newtown to City Bike and Bus Improvement hearings. So we are going to kick back into it. We've got Sarah here. Kia ora Sarah, so you've got 5 minutes to speak to your submission, and if you wanted to answer any questions, just leave some time at the end for those.
Okay.
If there are any.
Thank you. I should preface this by saying that I've lived in Newtown for 17 years now, moved here from London. So I lived in London as a cycle commuter for over a decade, commuting in and out of central London. I used to work just off Oxford Circus. So I mean, if you're familiar with London, you can imagine what a bike ride that is. And in the UK, I never actually learned to drive. I didn't need to. I grew up just outside London, and we would basically get buses and trains and cycle everywhere. And I moved to Wellington, bought myself a brand new bicycle because my old one was dead. And within 3 months had given up cycling and decided to learn to drive, simply because it's not safe to cycle in Wellington, especially around Newtown. And there's multiple reasons for that, obviously. It's not, London and Wellington are very different places. The thing with London is that you have alternative routes you can use. There are back streets, side streets, etc. But the other big thing that struck me here is the fact that the vehicles are much bigger on the roads here. There's a lot of big cars, big utes, people movers, SUVs, etc. People who, you know, for whatever reason have these vehicles. I've got a big MPV myself now because my son's 6'4" and I can't fit him in a normal car. And also one of the big arguments around, particularly around Newtown, has been about on-street parking and the availability of parking for shops and access to local shops. And my experience, my personal experience is just this morning I live just on Green Street, so like right in the middle of Newtown, from there down to the basin and back with my dog. And you can kind of see the actual physical difference in the stress for cyclists between when they're on that new protected section by the hospital and then when they're in either the main part of Ridderford Street or back onto Adelaide Road. You can actually like see people's shoulders physically dropping with the like, I can make it, I'm safe. And I think one of the issues I noticed around the parking is it's not so much about the convenience of the parking, because there's tons of parking around Newtown. We've got all the new parking in the Countdown, downstairs, the lowest story of Countdown's often half empty. We've got loads of parking in and around the hospital. But the thing is that people don't want to use that parking. Either they forget it's there, as in the case of Countdown, or because the hospital parking is extortionately expensive. So people use the on-road parking because they can see it and it's free. So it's kind of that thing, I think a lot of people have got into their heads of, you're taking away this thing that I can see you taking away, rather than giving me something else, which is the space to cycle safely and the space for buses to move more freely. Because that was the other thing I really noticed in London. As a cyclist, it was an absolute hellscape for a long time. But when they brought in congestion charging, which basically had the effect of making, lowering the amount of traffic, and I don't think we can do that in Wellington because I don't think it'll work. But the other thing it did was it got loads of cars out of bus lanes, so buses could move more freely. So on the days that I didn't want to cycle because the weather was horrible, which is going to be a big factor in Wellington, it was actually really easy and convenient to get the bus, because one of the things I had for me was that I knew exactly how long it would take me to cycle from A to B. It used to take me 35 minutes to get from my home in South London to work at Oxford Circus. If I took a bus and the traffic was bad, it could take up to 2 hours. In a car, who knows? Once they cleared the bus lanes, because they'd reduced the amount of traffic on the roads and started enforcing the bus lanes, it would take me 40 minutes on the bus, as long as the bus wasn't late or turned up. So the other thing I really noticed, and that I've noticed around Wellington a lot, particularly now I've got older in-laws who aren't necessarily that mobile, is how difficult it can be to access places when you need to access them and you don't have an alternative for a car. You know, I can't take my mother-in-law, for example. I can't go, right, let's hop on a bike, or let's, even hop on the bus and go to this place. She needs to be driven to and from places. One of the other reasons we've got a slightly bigger car. And that would be so much easier if I actually knew that there was kind of parking wasn't going to be jammed up because everybody decided to drive. The other thing I've noticed since I learned to drive, the other thing I should note was I remember first moving over here in 2005 and my mother-in-law asking me if a friend of hers was working on a cycle lane advisory group for the council. And that was like 17 years ago, and we're still really waiting for it to kick in, but it's a lot better than it was. The other thing I've noticed as a driver is that I'm actually much more likely to get in my car and drive out somewhere like Queensgate or to North City Shopping Centre, park there because it's free and it's covered, and then just go to the shops there. I'm much less likely to actually drive into the city or the CBD. I'm much less likely to drive out to a local suburb. I normally, when I'm around Newtown, I only ever use my car to go to the supermarket. I drive down to Pack and Save. I drive back again. I occasionally pick up my eldest from high school if the weather's particularly awful, and that's it. So the issues for me, I would love to.
Sarah, we've reached the end of your 5 minutes.
Oh, sorry.
If you just want to you could just do a summary point, and if you want.
Yeah, for me.
You want to summarize?
Yeah, for me, creating the new safe separated cycleways will do three things. It'll create alternative safe routes for cyclists. We can basically give them space on the road. It will reduce the amount of traffic on the roads for a lot of people, so it should make car journeys more efficient. And it will then also, in that way, create space for people that need to use their cars. It'll free up parking spaces for them. It'll make it easier for them to get to and from places. So it'll actually increase accessibility for a lot of people. And those are my main issues.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
No worries. Next, we've got Sarab Doshi and Mike Price joining us. So you've got 10 minutes to speak to your submission today. And if you want to leave some time for questions at the end of that, you are more than welcome to do so. And if you watch the chat, we'll let you know when there are 30 seconds left and when your time is up. So if you could turn your video on, Sarab, that would be really good. Yeah. Oh no, but that's because it's time sheets a bit around. Democracy Services are probably contacting me. We'll just give a few minutes to get Sarab set up. We've got an extra 5 minutes to play with, so it should be all right. Okay, so we're going to go on to Nadine, if you're online, Nadine. Awesome, kia ora. So you've got 5 minutes to speak to your submission today, and make sure you leave any time for questions if you'd like to, and if there are any. And yeah, take it away.
Kia ora koutou, ko Nadine Dajaho. I'm a young mum with a 2-year-old daughter, and I also live with my in-laws. And I've been cycling for years, and I've kind of always been like, oh yeah, I believe in cycleways, but it's not really a big deal for me. But ever since having now a young daughter and living with my in-laws who just won't cycle under the current conditions and ending up driving them around quite a lot, it's really become very apparent to me how important it is. And I don't live in Newtown, I actually live in Āmua Valley, but travel through Newtown quite a lot. And actually am considering buying a house in Newtown because it just feels like I'm sick of living my life having to drive everywhere, and seeing the new proposals and actually the speed at which it will be rolled out is actually like, well, maybe we should just move to Newtown. We can have it now. Our family can get around and not drive easily. So I guess that's another factor to consider, is that communities do change and evolve, and it will be something that attracts people to the area who don't live there now. And I just very much applaud the new approach that council is taking of doing things rapidly and doing things affordably. I don't think that we have the time to wait another 20 years until we have a cycleway. It makes me quite depressed thinking that, oh, you know, my daughter's 2 and like even by the time she's in school, she might not be able to cycle. I very much enjoy it and would say keep it up. The part that has been built looks really amazing. I guess I would just continue to say that in using that flexible approach, be really proactive with your monitoring and be willing to change things if they're not working perfectly. I think there are pieces that could probably be improved, and that's the huge benefit of, you know, not doing everything in concrete from the beginning, is the ability to change it. But that actually requires council to not just look at things as set it and forget it. It actually takes going back and improving things over time. And I guess the council is challenging people to do that. And there are a couple examples of these type of cycleways around Wellington that have really been forgotten and are in really poor condition. The one on Victoria Street and the one on Rugby as examples, or they've just been kind of put in plastic and now they're broken and no one ever goes back and fixes them. So you'll be voting on this today and like, that's great. But I would also expect like 6 months down the road, 12 months down the road, actually check on how it's working and ensure that it's actually being kept in good condition. Because if you don't keep these things in good condition and keep them clean, then it's not going to work on an ongoing basis. And you know, move them around if there does need changes or if the community says that particular parts aren't working. And that's the great advantage of this approach. And I would say keep doing more of it. And yeah, thanks from me. And we'll see how it goes in terms of moving to Newtown and hopefully getting to enjoy more of it. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Nadine. I just wanted to ask, just because you've got a little bit of time left, a lot of people who oppose the cycleways will use the cycleway counters and the numbers that they observe of riders on the cycleways as a way to say we don't need them. What would you say to those people about demand and what that might reflect?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that cycleways are just like building a train or building a road. If you just build a train from one stop from Lower Hutt to Upper Hutt or something, no one would use the train. And that's kind of the situation we are with cycleways, where we've built tiny little bits, but like no one wants to go from the bottom of Victoria Street to the top of Victoria Street. People want to go from their home to their work or to their school. And you're not actually going to see those dramatic numbers until it's really that way. And thinking about my in-laws, they're totally terrified of the traffic, and they're not going to cycle until they know that they can get from one end to the other in a really safe way. So it takes that commitment to building it to a high quality and for actually covering people's whole journey. And I know that that's a tricky thing to do, but it's going to take time before you really get to a wider group of people feeling comfortable.
Awesome, Nadine. Thank you so much for joining us this morning and sharing your views. Hope you have an awesome day.
Thanks very much. Shut up.
Hopefully we've got Sorab online. Oh, yep, we do. Awesome. Kia ora. So you've got 10 minutes to speak to us today about your submission, and feel free to leave some time at the end to answer any questions if there are any. And if you just watch the chat, we'll let you know when you've got 30 seconds left and when your time's up. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. So I'm Saurabh Doshi. I'm the General Manager for Sojourn Apartment Hotel. We are a hotel located on Rutherford Street, number 22 to 26. And we are located right next to the Ronald Mcdonald house. Basically, we are a very new business. We've been in operation for the last 18 months. When we first opened, the bus and the bicycle lane wasn't existing on the street, and we had 2 car parks, 10-minute car parks, right next to the bus stop outside Ronald McDonald House for people to be able to stop, get off their cabs, cars, unload, people getting dropped off or picked up. Since the introduction of the bus lane and the bicycle lane, those car parks were removed, and the entire Rediford Street has got nowhere to safely stop and get down if they're accessing our business. Services can't access our business anymore, the likes of courier drivers, rubbish collection, waste management has been rejecting pickups, citing that they can't access our site. There is nowhere for them to stop to collect the rubbish. Major clientele, given our location opposite the hospital, is mainly patients, supporting family, disabled people needing support, visiting hospital, and there is nowhere safe for them to get down in front of the hotel or disembark or embark in front of the hotel, let alone all the other guests who are visiting the city. So our request was, look, we are not against the bicycle lane, but then the planning of this particular bicycle lane and the bus lane is not safe for anyone. Ever since the introduction of this lane, there has been lots of, one thing I wanted to add was right next to the hotel, in front of number 20 Rediford Street, there's a pedestrian crossing to go towards the hospital, and just after those lights, the bus lane, bike lane merges with the normal car lane, which I'm sure you guys have the numbers for the traffic that builds up on Rediford Street, and it is a very busy street. So people start preparing, people who are turning onto John Street start preparing, merging into that common lane right in front of the hotel or well before. If everyone was following the rules, it is illegal. B, there is no way safe for people accessing the hotel to turn into, so that they can't access the hotel entrance as well, because it's illegal, because it's a bus lane. It's right in front of the hotel. There's also a lot of road rage incidents where people are honking, cyclists are banging on cars because they've stopped. Buses are honking at cabs that have stopped in front of the hotel, letting people down. The closest safe space is 500 meters down, whereas there's a legal park for people to stop, which is too far away. Sorry, Mike's just joined. Mike's the director for Sojourn. So so continuing on that, our request is there needs to be more consideration and research to make this bicycle lane more safe. If it's not going to be safe, then it needs to be removed, or add somewhere close to the hotel, like the original space where there was a 10-minute loading zone for people to be able to stop and embark or disembark, be it services or cabs dropping off people. So that's what I wanted to bring up today. I haven't been listening to other people's comments here, but if you're not sure if you guys have got any feedback on that or not.
Thank you, Sarab. Mike, did you want to add anything onto that, just because you've got about 4 minutes left to speak?
Sorry, Mike, you're on mute.
Apologies for my lateness. I was traveling from another meeting in the hut. Saurabh and I discussed what we wanted to raise during the meeting, and I'm guessing Saurabh has raised all those points. But I think the council's approach, and I suppose if I can use the word, I won't use that word. Discounting the impact that this has on business is floundering for me. You know, there's no consultation. Your lane was challenged a number of months ago, and it's still sitting there causing significant disruption. And you know, I was going the other way the other day towards Newtown, and that design of your lanes where you cross over at the top of the hospital is just terribly confusing. And I don't know how much planning's gone into this, but I'd suggest that you move it from a significant road like that to a back road for cyclists or something else, but it's just not a workable solution in this current format.
Cool, thank you. We've got some questions for you both, starting with Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. There's been a lot of comment being made about not enough engagement with some of the community being impacted by the changes. Would you say that, or how could the council have improved getting feedback from all parts of the community in coming up with a design?
Well, I'm not sure, sorry about it, that we had any communication from you directly as a business that was, you know, did you communicate directly with us as a business on the route?
Well, that's what our officers have advised us they have.
Yeah, so we were advised that there's planning going on, and this lane is being introduced. That's about it. But then my question to you guys is, what sort of planning was gone in terms of identifying the hazards of introducing this lane? The hazards have not been looked into in detail. There's living proof. You can spend some time in front of the hotel and you can see the number of incidents that are happening. It's not safe for motorists, it's not safe for buses, it's not safe for pedestrians, it's not safe for cyclists. So it's not safe for anyone. The hazards have not been analyzed or assessed properly before making a decision of introducing the lane itself. As I said earlier, like, we're not opposed to the bicycle lane, but then this particular spot or this particular street is not the right place to have that bicycle lane, or given the amount of traffic that passes through, the number of ambulances that go through, number of other emergency services that go through.
Thank you for that response. Thank you.
Cool, thank you very much. And we have come to the end of your 10 minutes. So thank you very much, Saurabh and Mike, for joining us today and sharing your views with us. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Next up, we have got the Wellington College Environment Club. So a big welcome to Tim, Brandon, Felix, Rees, Moore, William, Stitt and Angus Arbonot. Kia ora. So you guys have got 10 minutes to speak to us today about your submission, and if you want to leave some time at the end to answer some questions, I'm sure you'll have many, so take it away.
All right. Hi, we would like to start by saying we're happy with the initiative that they're having more cycle lanes all across Wellington, especially around the CBD region or area. We strongly support, obviously for environmental reasons, but also in terms of health around pollution. and about the character of the city. We're not very big fans of kind of auto-focused infrastructure, car parks, big roads. So yeah, in general, we're highly supportive of the idea. And yeah, I'll pass on to him for a bit.
Yeah, so I think it's basically, like, especially for us being Wellington College, like Kent Terrace is a key factor, and lots of students would, I think, like to commute by cycling as opposed to by busing or driving or whatever, and this would make it a very viable option for them. I think a key thing for us is that it wouldn't necessarily just be the Kent Terrace route that would help it. It would need to be connected to a whole bunch of suburbs and stuff. Like just that one section wouldn't really help our community that much because they need to get from Pūroro, Kandala, Naio, wherever it might be to get to that cycle lane. So although that would encourage it in that area, it might not be enough to get them cycling in the first place. So that's one thing that we're probably quite big on, is actually seeing how it all connects together as opposed to just this one route individually.
Yeah, because even if, of course, there are safety concerns if you're putting a bike lane adjacent to a major highway, but if we are to not put it by one of these big roads and we're putting it on a back road, we need to make provisions so that cyclists who are commuting to work or going home or anywhere else, we need to have bike lanes that go to, if not directly to, close to major hubs of the city, so that any movement across the city can be done with a bicycle, so that we get more people on cycles and out of cars.
I think some of the concerns we've had have been, mostly around the safety and around the way it's perceived or received by the general public. I think, with the safety, I think that would be very much once all the different regions, and we're aware that a lot of them are still under the planning phase. But I think when all the regions, when there's more of an interconnected bike network, I think a lot of those concerns are remedied in that sense. But as well, there's a degree of a lot of people don't cycle often. They're not very skilled cyclists. And in terms of the transition phase and getting people, or getting more of the public using them to the greatest extent, we feel like there should be some degree of centralized education around how to use them. And I think that kind of feeds into one of our main concerns, is about the marketing, advertising, and getting feedback on the cycle lanes. I feel like the communication between the planning and the public has been lacking a little bit. We appreciate what Alex, who came to Wellington College, spoke to the school. That was good. I just feel like in terms of the general public, there wasn't a whole lot of communication in that sense. And there's a lot of people, parents and whatnot, that we've talked to that haven't had so much of an idea of what's going on. And so maybe a bit resistant to the change because they're not aware of the project and the evidence research behind it, and where you're planning on taking it.
You're not being informed exactly about what's going on. And while it's good to get the word out in schools, you can send one speaker and speak to the whole school. There's still definitely need to get information out to individual people, either through advertising or some other campaign.
Yeah, and I think especially like providing this project does get rolled out, for the sake of this, we'll assume that it does. I think when it actually is implemented, it needs to be like a big focus thing, because obviously it'll be lots of drivers who don't like the idea and lots of cyclists who do, but there might be not a cohesive opinion, and making sure that like all the cyclists, new and like old, are kind of know what is expected about them in cycleways, and even like drivers as well, what's expected of them in relation to cyclists, because all of a sudden you've got all these extra cyclists on the road, which sure, like drivers will know about, but they might not know about to that extent. And it's important that, like, again, safety is precedent, and that we do so that we actually are encouraging people to cycle, as opposed to putting the infrastructure there, but actually people aren't still feeling safe to do so.
That's true. Most people know how to ride a bicycle, but there's a difference between knowing how to ride it and knowing how to ride it safely on a public roadway and sharing that road with cars and buses.
Awesome. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much it from us, but we'd love to take some questions.
Awesome, and you've got quite a few, so we'll start with Councillor Matthews and then Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. And I guess my question is, because we heard from someone who's a school teacher.
So you're cutting out
Earlier this morning about climate. So, oh, am I breaking up? Can you hear me now? So yeah, just about climate anxiety, and if that's a thing that you see in people around you, and how that makes people feel about decisions like this they can see in the city.
I think there's definitely a growing degree of climate anxiety, especially among younger people. But I still feel like especially in New Zealand, where we don't feel the short-term effects that much, I feel like
there's a feeling of detachment.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly.
If you're in a bigger country, or a country like, say, Pakistan right now is getting dreadful floods, but here in New Zealand, we're not really getting as much or any at all impact yet.
Well, like, look at the South Island, but still, like, I think there's obviously going to get some impact, but I think, yeah, as they're saying, it's like our impact is only going to have so much. So I think there's, like they're saying, a disconnect in terms of, like, they feel like, oh, one person cycling in New Zealand, where a lot of the pollution's going on in the US, might not make that much of a difference, which is probably where a lot of the anxiety comes from.
Awesome, thank you. And then we've got Councillor Calvert.
It's probably not a question, but just a comment. Can I just say I really congratulate you on your sharing your views. I think I've never heard, you've actually come across really neutral. You've just given a very broad aspect. So I just really want to congratulate you on having a thought of lots of different aspects. And I really think we might have got a better solution if you guys have been actually on.
Councillor Calvert, I'm going to need you to ask a question, because we have got some people who are going to ask questions.
That's fine. That's all. I'm just giving my praise. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I just wanted to also.
Sorry,
I got cut out there. Thank you for coming in. It's really great to hear from young people. Could you give us a perspective around, you sort of touched on it, but within your school and within your friendship circles within Wellington, how strongly are people focused on cycleways as a way that our city can reduce emissions and encourage people into active transport? Can you just give us a sense of, from your perspective, how, where are young people at on this?
Okay, I think when the idea is proposed, there's been very little resistance. I think people are like, okay, cool, this seems like a good idea, especially when they see the research behind it. I think that there's young people don't generally have much of an interest in city planning.
What?
I think in terms of proactively putting their opinions forward, I think there's a lot of apathy there because they just don't care.
But generally, we are enthusiastic to be active, so a lot of people are be happy to bike.
Yeah, when there's
opportunity was available, which is backed up by a survey that we actually did just before this session with as a reference, saying that people would be keen for public transport, active transport, if there was more means to do so.
Yeah, right now it's not really.
Thanks so much. Yeah. Oh, sorry, you carry on.
No, I think we're good.
All right, we've got one last question
Kia ora koutou. It's great to hear from you. And my question is, you mentioned around sort of communications, and I can understand what you're saying around people understanding what's happening and the opportunities. Have you got any thoughts? Because council does put out quite a lot of comms around these things, but of course it doesn't always cut through. Have you got any thoughts around the sort of ways that we can, capture people's attention? Because obviously these are really important issues, and you've had the benefit of hearing from our staff, which is awesome. What do you reckon we could do?
For young people, I would say social media is a good way of connecting. Obviously, it's not ideal often in the format that you can't get a lot of information across. But yeah, in terms of getting the word out a bit more about it, I think social media is invaluable. And then in terms of older, people beyond school, I think groups like school, like if you could get schools to talk to their parent and parent community about it, in relation to how it affects their kids and things, I think existing groups around the city would be a good way of being kind of middlemen in terms of spreading the word more.
And I think it's like as much advertising as you can do realistically. Like, even if people aren't necessarily engaging on the topic, just them being aware of what is happening. Like, hey, there is a cycleway system. Here's how you can give feedback if you want to, but also just here's what's happening. And I think keeping people informed about what's happening in the first place is probably more important than getting lots of engagement, because them not engaging is probably saying that they're relatively happy with the thing that's going place.
You want to provide the critical information up front, especially in social media advertising, so that you get them to know the important things right up front, so that they know it no matter what, even if they skip the ad.
Yeah.
Kia ora. Sounds like we need you on the team.
Yeah, hey, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your views. It was a really comprehensive submission, and I think we all really appreciated having your views here today. So yeah, have an awesome day, and thank you for submitting.
Yeah, cheers guys.
Thanks for the opportunity.
All good, no worries. Next up, we've got Stephen Meslin joining us. Kia ora, Stephen. You've got 5 minutes to speak to your submission, and if you wanted to answer any questions, if there are any, just leave some time at the end of that 5 minutes and we can do that, and we'll let you know in the chat when your time's up. Thank you.
Kia ora, councillors. I'm Stephen Meslin. I'm a nurse, councillor, father, and I love to explore Wellington beaches, playgrounds and haunts by bike. The Newtown bus and cycleway means a lot to my family and I. This is about creating a vibrant, safe and fun city. My dream is simple, but it feels so good. Being able to bike from Newtown to Oriental Beach safely, and in not so long, my kids bike in the stretch on their own bikes. Something I never dream of on the roads as they are now. This is about sharing that experience with friends who currently don't bike because they don't feel safe biking on our roads. This is about safety. I already feel safer cycling this route 2 to 4 times a day, often between daycare, just off Adelaide Road and Newtown School. Continuous protected cycleways are a game changer. This is about health outcomes. Following operations on my spine as a teenager, back pain became a part of my life. But a few years ago during lockdown 2020, I got into biking. My pain dramatically improved from 1 to 2 times a week to less than monthly. It's not a secret that biking is good for health outcomes. And when a city enables this safely, those health outcomes are applied across a larger population with an uptake in cycling. This is also about choice. It's no wonder people don't bike in Wellington when they have demands of traffic on narrow, congested roads. It's no wonder people don't use the bus when these buses are stuck in the same traffic as cars. We need to give people the choice to walk, bus, cycle, scoot, skateboard, and to do it safely and conveniently. This is also about our environment. We can't keep polluting our atmosphere and our streets. Climate change is here and it's happening. This is a cheap and quick way to reduce our emissions. A recent health and air pollution study shows 3,000 New Zealanders die per year from air pollution, related health problems costing $15 billion per year. The problems are real and the plan is simple, cost effective, it improves health and well-being, choice, and it gives my kids and I a safe, fun journey to Oriental Bay. Some comments I'd like to make on the construction. The most unsafe parts of the cycleway are the merge points. This is more a reflection on changing from a cycleway to general traffic. Continuous bike lanes are safer and better. A merge point I noticed to be dangerous is Ridderford northbound before John Street. Frequently, general traffic is merging into the bus lane at this same point. It feels scary. Cycle lanes should be extended to the lights with a cycle priority green. Bollards placed between general traffic lane and bus lane to enforce cars driving in the bus lane to deter this dangerous behaviour. There are spots on the north end of Adelaide Road without continuous bike lanes, such as outside A&E. This should be fixed. The Main Street intersection should be fixed as proposed. Basin reserves should be available 24/7 or alternative protected routes put in place when it is closed. Make the bus lanes 24/7. Enforcement of parking and driving in the bus lane is essential to keep the lanes clear and safe. Turning slip lanes on Cambridge and Kent Terrace should remain closed to ensure the safe passage of cyclists. I know this will be an inconvenience for some motorists, but I will not apologise for making it safe for those who want to bike and not be cut off by motorists who just want to save a few seconds. As a side, there's a cycleway plan being generated by a car yard that uses a narrow footpath, risks cyclists being doored by parked cars and crosses dangerous slip lanes. This plan is a gargantuan leap backwards. Let's get this built. Let's not make compromises. Let's do it for our planet. Let's do it for our kids. Let's do it for our health. Let's do it for our city. You're on the right track. See you on the road.
Oh, kia ora, Stephen. Thank you for that submission. We've got about a minute and a half left for questions if anybody had any. So good. I think you were really clear in your submission. So, we've got Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, I just thought I would ask you, Stephen, because it's sort of been unanswered, but we've had a few submissions where people are saying, why can't the cyclists use back roads? So what would be your response to that you shouldn't have the direct route for cycle traffic?
Why can't general traffic use back roads?
That's a great answer. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, thank you, Stephen. You have an awesome day. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Next up, we've got Christopher Dunfield from the Cancer Society. Kia ora, Christopher. Thank you for joining us. You've got 10 minutes to speak to your submission, and if you want to answer any questions, you need to leave time for that at the end. Thank you. We'll let you know when your time's up.
Okay, thanks. Well, I'm afraid my submission's not going to be anywhere near as positive from your point of view as the last one. We have a situation in Newtown and Ridderford Street, which is, in my opinion, creating serious issues for the entire community there, as well as traffic, and as well as a lot of the essential facilities and health services that are located there. In Ridderford Street, the removal of car parking outside of the Cancer Society, the medical labs, Wellington Hospital is just entirely unconscionable. I don't think long-term councillors who voted for this particular cycleway are going to be forgiven anytime soon. I think also
Chris,
that
if you
when
could just,
you're looking at it,
if you could just keep your political comments just during the campaigning season to the topic at hand today, thank you. You just need to unmute.
what I'm presenting today is pretty much what was discussed in the Cancer Society. The arrangement at bus stops there is also a bit of an issue, I think, for a few people. The setup where you actually have a bus stop and people walk over a cycle lane to get on a bus and all the rest of it is actually creating a dangerous scenario. And I have been approached by various people suggesting that they have had almost been hit by bikes as they got off buses or got on buses, or as they were picking up snapper cards if they dropped them, and so forth and so on. I think we're looking at a situation where bicycle behaviour needs to be taken into account as well, because some of these cargo bikes are now actually reasonably formidable weapons. And if they hit elderly people, they can do a lot of damage. So we've really got to start looking at the whole scenario and design of these cycleways over again. It's kind of reached a position where, excuse me, I've had a bit of a problem with the throat this morning. It's a situation where I think we've not properly addressed how these things would operate. The designs appear to be ill-conceived. They're actually also badly designed, and they create a situation which for many people can be quite dangerous. Not only for pedestrians and people getting on and off buses, but we've also got a situation where cyclists themselves, when they misbehave, are creating a problem, such as at the pedestrian crossing. Quite a few cyclists have been recorded traveling straight through that, a red light and all. Now, when you're looking at the total bike network plan, I just think this whole thing needs to be revoked and completely reassessed, okay? I don't think the consultancy that's taken place around the city is anywhere near enough. And at the same time, I honestly believe too that the council is not performing its duty in ensuring that everybody is considered when these cycleways are being looked at, okay? So we're trying to say here that in Newtown, there was an injunction, and obviously a judge tended to agree with some of the local businesses and community that there was a reason to put it on hold. And I think we all know what those reasons are. So what I would suggest is that when you're looking at these situations and you look at places like the Cancer Society, you need to completely change the look of the design, okay? There are plenty of examples overseas, and Holland in particular, where parking is not forsaken, where cycleways are used, and the two operate quite happily together. Whether or not bus lanes and all the rest of it need to come into play as well is another matter, but certainly right now, the situation outside the Cancer Society is unacceptable. These are people going through cataclysmic changes in their lives. They do not need to be driving around a block 3 or 4 times to find a park, to go and have radiation treatment or chemotherapy, okay? Get that clear in your heads. And there are people that actually go to hospital because there's somebody in there that's had an emergency. They need to be able to park quickly. Okay, so this is important as well. It needs to be taken into account. What I would suggest is what's happened in Ridderford Street needs to be removed. People need to go back to the drawing board, and they need to reassess the entire layout and arrangement. All right, now the final thing I would like to say is no one is against cycleways per se, okay? But there are cycleways and there are cycleways. What you've created are abominations. There are cycleways in Europe that work beautifully, okay? Go and look at them. Obviously, the consultants you use are not doing the job, okay? The situation we have here is the design is wrong, it's flawed, and it's creating dangers for people. And you've now also got a situation when the argument is used that we want to reduce emissions. Have you seen the traffic in Ridderford Street now? It stretches from John Street all the way back to the township. Cars standing still, going nowhere, emitting fumes. You have created emissions. You are not solving the emission problem. The only way to do that is to keep traffic flowing. People aren't getting out of their cars. People are not going to jump on bicycles. And if they ever did, it would not save the planet. Okay? So I think what's needed is a complete rearrangement of thinking. And what you've got to do is sit down and seriously reconsider these decisions that you're making. Now, that's pretty much what I wanted to say. I have consulted with the Cancer Society, and they are very unhappy about the situation. Their car park, tragically, is always full, as is the car park at the Wellington Hospital. Okay, so bring back the car parks, let these people get their treatment without going through the complete and utter harassment of having to try and find a car park, because they're not going to go to the hospital on their bicycles, I can tell you that now. And oftentimes they now have to arrange for people to drop them off. All right. So you've altered their lives, you've impacted their lives, and the way you've done that is completely unacceptable. That's it for now, and pretty much I'm over and out.
Cool. So you've got some questions. You've got quite a few questions here. So I'd ask members to just keep their questions quite brief. So we'll go Councillor Calvert, then Councillor Fitzsimons.
Thanks, Chris. Consultation's gone on for the past 3 weeks. How effective has that been with the likes of the Cancer Society?
Well, as far as I can understand, there is a sense of negativity. Okay. They tend to think, as do I, that when these consultations take place, they will not be listened to, that some bizarre rationale will tend to prevail once again, and that no changes will take place. Now, that's pretty much how everybody stands on this issue, and that's a bad reflection, actually, on what's been happening.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay.
Cool. And then we've got Councillor Fitzsimons.
Yeah, hi Chris. Can I just check first of all that you have authority to be representing the Cancer Society today?
Yes,
Is that who
I
you're
have
here?
spoken to their director, CEO. I spoke to him last night and he asked me to do this.
Great.
And I've consulted with them and I've spoken with them. Have you done that?
No, I'm just asking you the questions right now.
Right, well, I've answered
So
it.
I can appreciate.
Spoken to them?
So, sorry, it's actually not an opportunity for submitters to ask questions of councillors.
Well, okay, proceed.
No, I was just checking, Chris, but I can appreciate the comments you've made around the location and the Cancer Society and the impact. But my question really is around your comments on the wider concerns the Cancer Society has around the Cycleway plan. And is that a position that the Cancer Society has developed? I think you described it that there's a real problem with the wider Cycleway plan and that we've created abominations around the city. Is that the position of the Cancer Society? And how did they arrive at that position?
Well, what they're looking at is an abomination outside their front door. So they're probably assuming that whatever else you build is going to be an abomination as well. And that's an understandable point of view.
And how did that position come about? Like, who was that kind of discussed with?
What do you mean, who was it discussed with? I mean, they all walk out the door every day and they look at the abomination outside. I mean, they don't need to discuss anything with anybody. They all see it for themselves every morning, every day they go to work. And I see it whenever I go by the Cancer Society and I see people, when you first put in the cycleways, you may have noticed that people actually parked in them. Yeah, because they had nowhere else to go. Now that should have been a bit of a sort of a light in the darkness for you, you know, to indicate that these things aren't working. Now the interesting thing is too, you know, a lot of the
sorry, I'm just going to have to cut you off there. You've come to the end of your 10 minutes. Thank you so much for sharing your views with us today on behalf of the Cancer Society. We really appreciate your time. Thank you. Have a great day. Next up, we have got the Ronald Mcdonald House, and we've got Sharon Whitaker here speaking to us on their behalf, joined by Debbie Robinson and Melissa Carroll. So you've got 10 minutes to speak to your submission, and if you wanted to answer any questions, just leave some time at the end of that 10 minutes to answer those, and we'll let you know in the chat when your time is almost up. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. So I'm Sharon. I'm the Wellington Programs Manager here at Ronald Mcdonald House, and two of my managers, Melissa and Debbie. So I'm actually going to read mine because I have many a thing to say and I've just broken it down. So for those that don't know, we are a charity accommodating families of seriously ill children who are patients at Wellington Hospital. For us, it's all about supporting our families and giving them a safe, secure home away from home. Our building, Ronald Mcdonald House, is situated directly opposite the hospital, entrance on Ridderford Street, and the trial bus platform cycle lane is along the front of our building at our main entrance. Many of us families spend their days and nights going to and from the hospital, particularly our ICU parents. So our main areas of concern are health and safety. We had a serious near miss of a family, as a family had right of way on the crossing at the southern end of our building while the lights were red and there's a disabled son was in a buggy and they were nearly wiped out on the cycle lane where a cyclist didn't stop for the red light. A staff member has also had 3 near misses on this lane with the same thing, cyclists going through the red lights. Speed being one of our main concerns, well, that is obviously, but this is even another thing. The speed is actually the cyclists are increasing their speed to go over the platform. So for us, this has become a very serious health and safety concern with huge risks and hazards. So parking, due to the removal of all parking on Ridderford Street, parking has had a huge impact on us every day. When the trial began, our car park, since the trial has begun, our car park has become become the go-to for hospital visitors, shuttles, taxis, couriers, other deliveries and service vehicles, all of which are not for us. So we have become car park wardens and our staff have given up counting how many times this occurs every day throughout the day. This is impacting our families who have ended up stuck halfway on the cycle lane, actually trying to get into our driveway. We absolutely need at least one, if not more, 5-minute drop-off parks on our side of the street for others, not for us. We've had shuttle drivers asking parents with babies and toddlers and all that comes with them, plus their luggage, to cross the road for their pickup, at which point our staff have intervened and insisted they come across, even if they can't get into our car park. And when they do, our car park's not big enough for them to turn around in. So they need to reverse their trailers and shuttles out onto the street with poor visibility. Please note, until the platform trial, they could park outside our front doors. So keeping in mind all of this with our weather conditions, trying to get up to the hospital loading zone, it's just a nightmare. We have families staying with us who can be incredibly stressed with a sick and sometimes terminally ill child, who are now faced with a very challenging obstacle course outside our front door and their front door, while with us just to come and go from their home away from home. So access to our car park, all RMHC Ronald McDonald House users, including couriers, anything to do with us, now need to navigate across a vehicle lane, a bus lane and a cycle lane, as well as pedestrians and e-scooters on the footpath to enter our own driveway. If it's accessible and there are no vehicles loading or unloading in the middle of our tunnel, that is. So we have the additional stuck out on the road. So also just to comment, if we're coming north, we have no turning lane and squeeze in the middle of the road so that we don't hold up the traffic to turn right into our driveway. Coming from south, we're only given 50 metres on the bus lane to turn left, or risk turning left in front of a bus that's hopefully stationary, a cycle lane. We have poor visibility and contending with pedestrians on the footpath, all in the hope our driveway is empty at the time, which we also can't see until we're actually driving in. So leaving our car park, since the trial and turning left, we are merging with a bus lane and a cycle lane. The biggest vehicle on our streets merging with the smallest, and then if it's rush hour, it can be impossible at times to get into the outside lane in order to head to the Basin Reserve. So in other words, the only way for us is to stay in the left lane and turn right at the countdown intersection, even though it no longer has arrow markings on the road to turn right. So most of our families who have vehicles are from out of town, about 100k away. And as you can imagine, it is a very daunting exercise, not only for them, but just being in a city. So this just adds to all the extra stresses just to gain access to our car park. So in conclusion, we would like several loading zones or P5s or P10s on our side of the road, not over at the hospital, which is like a couple of streets away. And in conclusion, we would like a barrier arm across our driveway to prevent unwelcome vehicles using our car park as a pick-up, drop-off parking zone. And this includes hotel guests, hospital patients, Cancer Society if they haven't got enough room, are parking in our, So we would like to stop wasting our time and get back to looking after our families, which is our main priority and focus, instead of wasting our precious time being car park wardens, traffic wardens. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Sharon, Debbie and Melissa. We do have some questions for you today. So we're going to start with Councillor Calvert online, and then we've got Councillor Rush in the room with a question.
Thank you. Now, given this, the outcome of this consultation is going to be decided by Council Committee next Thursday, so that work can carry on. What's your thoughts? Do you think that the council has got enough time to actually really consider what you're saying and then be able to apply it to the ongoing work?
No, I don't. Obviously, there was a communication breakdown initially. Since I heard publicly that we would be consulted or asked our opinion, I sent an email every single day to Transport, to Cycleways, to Info. And it wasn't until I got a call on 5 o'clock the day before the submissions were due that someone would come and see us, and they did at 9 o'clock the day the submissions were due. So I had to quickly get everything done in order for that to happen. So in fact, we did it because we're very passionate, but we had no time because, and I can appreciate busyness, but yes, we finally got contact at 5 o'clock the day before the submission was due. And then they came at 9 o'clock to hear us out. And then we had to do all of that by that day at 5.
Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Rush.
Just thanks very much, Sharon and team, and thank you for the work you do. Just can you give me an indication of how many kids you are looking after on average?
So we have 35 rooms. So the actual patients are in, so that can be families of 5. Often just mum on her own who is attending to a NICU baby. So they have to go over, every 3 hours to feed, including at night. The actual siblings are the families that we have. However, we do have, if we're undergoing treatment. So in answer to your question, it varies. Like we could have 15 children who are patients undergoing treatment, or we could have 5 children who are siblings of 15 children in the hospital. So yeah, it's their families, but we do have day treatments and overnight stays and things like that. It's very hard to tell, but we have 35 rooms.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate the work that you do, and I know it's valued to so many families. I was very interested in the comment you made around a barrier arm, because I totally appreciate you don't want to be parking wardens. I mean, I'm not expecting you to have, but I thought I'd just ask on the off chance. Have you looked into the cost of installing that? And I'm just wondering if there's a way that the council might be able to help a bit with that. Do you have any information? Totally fine if you don't.
We don't have any information. However, this is just new to us because we didn't, prior to having the car parks go, we had kind of an issue where we'd go out every now and again, but of course now that there's no parking, we've decided that actually what a barrier would probably be the way to go. But as you can appreciate, and due to the fact it's not our fault, we haven't looked into it, but I can imagine it would be quite expensive. And I know that it would, I mean, there's twofold. It would definitely stop anyone not being in our car park that shouldn't be. But what my concern is we can fix our problem, but are we going to create a problem where we're going to have backup of traffic going out of the driveway because all of us, there's no park for the person that would normally come in, for instance, like, if the Cancer Society is full, they come and try and park here. But if we've got a barrier, are we just sort of making a mess outside?
That's right, moving the problem onto somebody else.
Which I mean, in all fairness, to be selfish and look after our families, a barrier would be perfect.
Yes.
But it's what could happen outside that barrier.
Yeah, impacting the cycle lane and other lanes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. We've come to the end of that 10 minutes, but I really appreciate the substantive submission that you've made, and we'll make sure to look into those practical solutions that you've put forward. So thank you very, very much for that, and hope you have an awesome day. Thank you
so much. You too. Thank you. Thank you.
So next up, we've got James Douglas here today. Kia ora, James. You've got 5 minutes to speak to your submission, and just save any time at the end if you wanted to answer any questions, and we'll let you know in the chat when your time's up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor, and I've got my small child with me, so if there's any noises, that's what it is. I'll keep her occupied with my hand. By way of introduction, my wife and I live in Newtown with our 1-year-old and 3-year-old daughters. We don't own a car, and we never have since we've lived in Wellington, because we've always been able to rely on public transport and walking. But 2 years ago, we picked up a cargo bike as a result of a council-run trial scheme, which was run through our daughter's school, and it's been fantastic. As a family, we kind of use the bike and the bus all the time, and we feel like there's kind of 3 key benefits to the cycle lane and bus lane that's going to be going in coming into town. So the first one is safety. So our cargo bike allows us to travel with both our children on the bike at the same time, and it's fantastic. The safety that comes from having a separated cycleway has been great, even on that section that's just outside the hospital. It really prevents those near misses that happen quite frequently with people opening doors, turning out without looking, and just it gives us a great sense of security when we're traveling with our kids. So the other benefit, the second benefit for us is definitely speed. So I previously travelled into the city using a bus, and that could take anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes due to the traffic that would build up and the buses needing to navigate that. Since I changed to commuting by bike, that reduced to about 15 minutes each way, which gives me an extra hour and a half with my kids every day, which has been fantastic. But I think the bus, having the separate bus and cycle lanes will not just help those people who are biking, but also those people who are commuting by bus. It's 45 minutes is too long to travel 5 kilometres. I'm not a very fit person, but I used to run and beat the bus. The other benefit is once you've got more people cycling and more people on public transport because it's safer and more efficient, then it makes it faster for those people who need to drive for various reasons. And we do need to drive from time to time, and luckily we've got a Mevo car service that we can use for that. The biggest benefit that we can see from having the cycleway and bus lanes coming from Newtown into the city is sustainability. So, you know, without a shift away from private cars towards active and public transport, the future for my children is frankly quite bleak. The impacts of climate change are already hitting us in the face, as we can see from the wild weather we've had in the last month or so. Without action on these issues, I shudder to think what the world that will leave for both my children, if she's ever quiet, and for their children as well. Now, we understand that there's trade-offs that come with any change, and there always are. But we think that the loss of kind of what is essentially council subsidised vehicle storage is worth the benefits for the entire community of having faster transport for everyone and safer transport. Thank you very much for the opportunity to submit on this matter.
Awesome, James. Kia ora. Thank you for your submission. We've got a couple minutes if anybody has any questions for James.
I will.
Cool, we've got Councillor Rush.
James, this is going to be a bit of an awkward one for you to answer, but I'm struggling myself. So you heard the folks from Ronald Mcdonald House who were just before you?
Yes.
So, you know, we're being asked to sort of balance benefits and so forth. How do you see the benefits of you and your lovely family being able to access a cargo bike and ride with folks who are coming to visit, you know, their kids who've got, you know, serious medical conditions?
So it's not just about my family, it's about everyone who uses that road, whether it be private vehicle users, bus users or bike users. And I also think that the Ronald McDonald House had already started to think about some quite good solutions to the issues. They are fortunate in that they have a car park that can be used, and with some creative thinking and things like the a barrier arm to control movement, it seemed like there were already some pragmatic solutions. Issues with people running red lights on bikes are definitely a safety issue, but people could run red lights before there was a cycleway, and they would run red lights if there wasn't a cycleway. So we need to identify those issues that are solvable, but there are trade-offs to be made, and I think that there are definitely viable solutions for those that don't involve scrapping the entire issue and starting again. And I think that was the point that they made, was that they are looking for a couple of small tweaks to enable them. They weren't saying to throw the whole thing out.
Awesome. Thank you, James. We've come to the end of your 5 minutes, but thank you for sharing with us today. Have a
Thank you very
day.
much for the question.
Next, we've got Kate Day. Kia ora, Kate. You've got 5 minutes to speak to your submission and leave any time at the end for questions if you have any.
And thanks for the opportunity to submit online. Just first of all, just want to just me here to all of the folks who are trying to negotiate the various complexities of this. I know that it's really, really challenging, having just heard the Ronald McDonald submission. Thanks for all the work that you're putting into this. My submission is strongly in support of the proposed changes. And this issue actually makes me really emotional. So I'm probably just going to refer to my notes. My main point is actually just to ask you to make these changes as quickly as possible, because it's probably one of the few issues that really daily affects my family's lives. So like the previous submitter, we don't own a car and we get around by riding bikes, walking and buses. And we do that because our mental health requires that we exercise, and it also requires that we do our best to live in a way that respects the environment. But that really does come at a huge cost, because I'm really scared that my husband will be in an accident. And every day when he leaves for work, the last thing I say to him is bike safe. And my most frequent prayer is each evening when he tells me he's on his way home, and I ask God to keep him safe. It doesn't have to be that way, and we don't need to have a big section of Wellingtonians living in fear because of how we choose to travel. But council really does need to move more quickly. 3 years ago, I submitted to a similar consultation about bike lanes, and I said, hopefully, by the time that I have young children that I'm wanting to bike with, biking will be safe for us, and it isn't. When my son was born, and when he was old enough to start cycling with him, I made a similar submission, and now we have our second child and it still isn't safe for us. The most recent submission I made, actually cycled into council with my son, and I pointed out then that in order for us to get to town from South Wellington, a very common commuting route, there was only one tiny stretch of actual cycleway, which is just by the basin, that was protected by a painted line. And for several sections of that journey, I had my 2-person vehicle with me and my son, literally riding in the gutter, coming up to John Street in the gutter with him in order to be as far away from trucks as possible. So I just want to remind us, I guess, of the urgency of this, and ask how long do we have to keep asking for just safety to get into town. I do acknowledge the huge work that's been done and the progress on Ridderford Street, and that's fantastic. Thank you for that. So please, continue to roll out these changes quickly, because every day is just perpetuated risk, and any day I could get a phone call that my husband has been seriously hurt. And that's not fair, because we're one less car on the road, which, as the previous submitter pointed out, benefits everyone by cutting congestion and pollution. So please implement these changes quickly in order to save our lives. Thank you.
Kia ora, Kate. We've got a question here from Councillor Rush.
So Kate, I guess where I struggle a wee bit is with the safety issue is, if you don't find it safe, then don't you find an alternative? And, that might be walking, or it might be catching the bus. I mean, isn't that the viable thing to do if you don't feel safe? Because a lot of people do.
Yeah, so I do catch the bus, and with my newest child, we do bus because it's not safe for us to cycle. But actually, I think it's a false, it's a false question to ask the group of people that choose to cycle. We don't ask the large number of people who have free parking on our roads, or have all of our roads currently set up for them. Lots of people choose to cycle, and it should be safe for us, just like it should be safe for all of the other ways that people choose to get around.
Thanks, Kate.
Cool. And quick one from Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, I'm just interested, Kate, because I know I've seen you quite a few times over the years talking about this issue, and we've heard from others about how our consultation isn't inadequate, and it's like a week long or whatever. So what would you have to say about people that are saying there hasn't been any opportunity for consultation?
I mean, I don't know about others' experiences, but I mean, certainly I've through various networks heard about multiple consultations on cycleways, including from South Wellington into town, and I've had my say multiple times.
Awesome, thank you, Kate. We've come to the end of that time, so thank you so much, and hope you have an awesome day. Next up, we've got Andrew Williams here. Andrew, you've got 5 minutes to speak to your submission, and you can leave time at the end if you'd like to answer any questions. Thank you.
Kia ora, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I don't have a car. My main mode of transport are cycling, bus and walking, so you won't be surprised now I'm strongly in favour generally of the proposals for bus lanes and cycles. I have some concerns. Concerns around about cyclists going through bus stops is one of them. I'm not a great fan of those, but I wanted to speak in particular about two concerns I have. Partly one on the proposed redesign of the main street, Ridderford Street Junction. At the moment, the cyclists are quite well protected, but that's come at a penalty to the motorists who can't filter at the left-hand side of the road travelling south to Mine Street. I think the proposed redesign is really very unsafe for cyclists. What it's effectively doing is putting cyclists and motorists in direct conflict at the junction, with cyclists wanting to go across the junction and motorists wanting to turn left at the junction. I think that's a very unsafe solution to the problem. It's also compounded further on from that. As you enter into Newtown, then cyclists are asked to merge with traffic. You can't merge traffic at different speeds. Cyclists are slower generally than motorists, and you can't merge traffic when they're traveling at different speeds. So it's a double unsafe modification to the system. I think that really needs to be rethought. A second observation is about the number of bollards proposed in all the cycle networks. In a way, I can see why they're there to stop motorists from using them. Victoria Street is a prime example where an unprotected cycle lane is queued in by traffic and wanted to turn left, and it makes it impossible to use. So I totally see why there should be some protection as a cycle route. But as a cyclist wanting to turn right, I'm sort of stuck in the cycle lane on the left, and I can't maneuver into the traffic, into the main lanes to turn right. I have to go up to the bollards and then do a 90-degree turn. In the case of Adelaide's road, it will be across 5 lanes of traffic, 2 bus lanes, 2 motor lanes, and a cycle lanes, and that's unsafe. You need to allow the opportunity for cyclists to filter into the main traffic and then make their right turn safely, and not just keep them bollarded in all the way down the road. And that's a problem with the cycle route as proposed all the way along, is that it's very confining to the cyclist. A more general note about pedestrian access on the proposed route, in that generally pedestrians get a very poor deal, generally in Wellington. So for example, a pedestrian crossing at the hospital, which is a major access point for a lot of users, pedestrians often have to wait up to 2 minutes to cross the road because they're given no priority really on that junction. Motorists get 80% of the time, pedestrians get 20%. And I wonder if that's something you can do generally about pedestrian priority as you're rolling out this network to improve the role of pedestrian. Make crossings instant response. So when you want to cross the road, you push the button, you cross. A lot of the time now, you push the button, you wait, you make a mad dash as soon as the break in the traffic, and then 30 seconds later, the crossing goes and nobody's crossing. So it's something I'd hope you'll be able to look at as well. Finally, I wanted just to confirm that With the construction of the cycle lane, cyclists will still be allowed to cycle in the bus lane should they wish to. I have quite a fast e-bike. I can pedal along at 45 kilometers an hour. And in some cases, it wouldn't be safe to cycle in the new cycle lanes because they can be narrow in places. And I wanted just to check that it was still going to be possible for cyclists to use cycle lanes and that they weren't going to be bus-only lanes the whole way through the network. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Andrew, for your submission. And Emily, I wasn't able to time that one, but do we have, how much time do we have left?
Yes, 50 seconds left. So time for a question.
Oh, yeah. Cool. Councillor Calvert.
Thank you, and thank you, Andrew. What you made a lot of good suggestions of what we can do, but given that the construction is going to kickstart again in the next couple of weeks, do you think it's worthwhile just taking a pause and actually looking at those suggestions, how we can make the areas better before we actually press the go button again?
It depends how flexible you are to making modifications on the fly. I think it would be better to get them right once rather than have several goes. And if it takes a few weeks to do that, I think I'm probably in favour of that. Assuming that that's an easier approach than then trying to progress a modification to a plan later.
Okay,
cool. Thank you. Thanks, Andrew, for your submission. I hope you have an awesome day.
Thank you.
Next, we've got Peter Nuns here. Kia ora, Peter. You've got 5 minutes to speak to your submission and leave any time for questions at the end if you'd like.
Kia ora, folks. Thanks for hearing my submission today. Just a caution here, my 9-month-old daughter's in the other room with my parents. If she starts squawking, I might have to run suddenly to get her. But I just wanted to give some personal reflections on the project as a resident of the area. I'm strongly in favor of it, and I think you should get on with building it sort of ASAP, basically. And I wanted to talk a little bit about why I think that's important. I've lived in Barber for a bit over 3 years at this point, since moving down from Auckland, where my family's from. My 4-month-old son spent most of his life here, and my daughter was born at the hospital down the road 9 months ago. So, you know, my family and I travel up and down the road on a daily basis. Sometimes I'm driving, sometimes I'm biking, and sometimes I'm on the bus. It really, you know, from day to day, it depends on where I'm going, who I'm traveling with, frankly, weather conditions when it gets too extreme. And you know, and I just wanted to reflect on the experience of that and how this project's going to change that experience. I think what I'd say to start with is that before moving to Barber, I did own a bike, but I didn't ride it on a regular basis. And I wouldn't describe myself as a cyclist. It's how I get around some of the time, not an identity fundamentally. But what I've found since being here is that it's actually a pretty convenient way to get around the area. It's more convenient than the other options available to me most of the time for most trips. So I've ended up biking more as a result. And, you know, then I got an electric bike with a kid seat on the back, big fluoro coat for visibility, and started traveling around with my boy. I think there was a comment earlier about bus lanes, you know, and why not take the bus? And that was actually why we bought the house in the place we did, because it was right on one of the main bus routes. And coming down from Auckland, my experience had been, you know, living in Mount Eden, you know, so again on a main bus route, same distance from my work, 5 kilometers from where I worked, downtown. And what I found in Auckland was that I could walk out the door, go to the bus stop, and be in town within 20-25 minutes, even at peak times. It was a really, really efficient commute. It was the easiest way for me to get to work on a day-to-day basis. In Wellington, what I've found is that I can walk out the door, go straight to the bus stop across the street, and it takes sort of more like 40-45 minutes to get to work in the morning, right? You know, sometimes a bit faster, sometimes a bit slower, depending on the day. So, you know, what I found, contrary to my expectations, I thought I'd be on the bus every day, just as the most convenient thing based on what I was familiar with from Auckland. And it hasn't turned out to be the case. And so I think there, you know, even if we're sort of getting, forget about the cyclists, let's get people on the bus. Some change is necessary to make that work. And this project seems to do some useful things for that as well. I think, getting around on a bike's often the quickest way to travel, but it's got some problems. I think it doesn't always feel very safe, and it's really not good enough as it is at the moment. I think, my experience has been that most drivers are really considerate. They'll give you space. They'll pass around you. They'll wait for you. I think that's great. But some people pass too fast or too close. And there's a lot of points where I'm worried about poor visibility around parked cars, people suddenly open doors, pulling out of driveways, etc. And I'm really just conscious that you only have to get unlucky once to not come home again. And that worries me on a daily basis. I'm doing what's most convenient for me. I'm doing what sort of works, but it doesn't feel safe. And I think the proposed upgrades will fix that issue. The section that's been built outside of the hospital has already made a massive difference. That stretch of road's gone from one of the most nerve-wracking bits of the corridor to the bit that I enjoy the most. I look forward to it now. Before I was kind of scared of it. From driving around the area, it hasn't changed the experience of driving around, but biking is a lot better. The bus is a lot better. And I guess just to close up, I've got a minute left. I want to just sort of reflect on the Island Bay Cycleway, which admittedly I missed all the controversy about what happened since it was installed, but I've seen, I've had the experience of sort of being in the neighborhood when it's just down the road. And what I've found is that it's sort of meant that I spend a lot more time on the South Coast, biking down there, biking around there, going to the beaches, going to the bays. It's just changed the experience of the whole area for my family. And that stretch of it, the beaches along there, they've become some of the favorite places for me and my family. My son sort of, in the summer, he'll sort of say he wants to go to Princess Bay every night when he comes home, right? And having that cycleway there means that it's, possible to get on the bike when he's a bit older, when my kids are a bit older, we'll all be able to go down there. It's actually a fantastic asset for the area. So get on with it, extend it. Thank you.
Kia ora, Peter. Thank you for your views and for sharing those with us today. Have a great day. Next, we've got, no, there's not. Next, we've got Luke Somerville, representing Generation Zero. Kia ora, Luke. You've got 10 minutes to speak your submission and just leave any time at the end for questions if you'd like to. Cool. Take it away.
Kia ora. How's it going, everyone? All right, I'm just going to make this real short and sweet because I think this is a pretty dry situation. So basically, I believe that deciding to act against the proposed changes is basically deciding to act against acting on climate. We know what we need to do to reach Te Arakura first to zero, and this is a really good way to cut our emissions and future-proof our city. Sorry. We just need to act now to make sure that everyone in Wellington can travel safely and that they basically don't have to be encased in a personal metal box to get from A to B. To those of you here who drive as well or need to drive, this is also a great option. I mean, cutting more cars off the roads for people who don't need to drive and making it easier for people to cycle and get around in other ways is going to make it easier. So it's pretty simple, in my opinion. And also, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that special interest groups like Gasly's can use their wealth to throw their weight around on this and influence the outcome. It's not fair game and it's not true democracy. We shouldn't let a few noisy and privileged detractors decide the future of our city. I'm basically asking you guys to take leadership and make the decisions necessary to build a sustainable, accessible city for all. That's basically it for me.
Awesome, Luke. Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Yep. I'll start. I was interested to know your views on quite a few, well, actually some people have been saying that our cycleway consultations have just been full of cyclist lobbyists and that it's not truly representative of Wellington. What would you say to those people?
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. I think that the cyclist groups are getting involved partially because it's just been, I mean, they haven't even had their voices heard on these issues for so many years. And I think that they're also speaking on behalf of many, many more people in Wellington. who really care about this, but don't really have the time or energy to get involved in the consultation process. And we have to remember, whenever it comes to council consultation, I mean, it's happening during the day. I'm lucky that I can take some time out of work to talk to you guys, but for a lot of people, they don't have that chance. People generally, I think there's a lot of support for, sorry, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but from what I remember, the numbers on people who do support more cycleways, low traffic neighborhoods, opportunities for their kids to bike to school. I mean, these are things that a lot of people do want. And I think, yeah, anyway, that's all I have to say on that.
Awesome, thank you. We've got Councillor.
Did you want to ask?
Calvert.
Thank you, Luke. And there's a number of people who are, very supportive of the cycleway going through, and for all the reasons that you've articulated. But one of the issues is that they're saying, look, we just don't think you've got some of this design right, and you're actually, it is going to cause safety issues. What's your view on the council taking a little bit longer, an extra few more weeks? Or look, I'm not an engineer, so I don't know how long it takes to redesign some of the stuff, but in actually getting it, having a better design and dealing with those safety issues that have been raised before the spade hits the ground anymore?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I personally think we just need to get on with it. The more consultation process that we have, especially when it comes to endlessly revisiting the same issues, the more likely it is for people to drop out of that engagement. Just from my own personal experience about volunteering with Gen Zero is, the more that you drag things on, the more people kind of just get exhausted and sort of drop out. Obviously, I'm not saying that we shouldn't care about the safety issues, but again, we just really need to get on with it. If we're going to hit our climate targets, this is a really important thing to do. And yeah, we just need to get moving, really.
Yeah, I suppose it's not about more consultation, it's actually about the engineers taking a little bit longer.
Cool, there we go. Oh, did you have another question, Councillor Calvert?
Yeah, somehow I must have got muted. Yeah, no, look, it wasn't about consultation, it's just about our engineers taking a bit longer to address some of the concerns that have been raised, to see whether they can factor those in. So taking a little bit longer to do those. So, but I'm not talking about necessarily extending consultation.
What sort of concerns are you referring to? Because I mean, if it's people who are worried about losing a few car parks, that's not really something we should be concerned.
Well, look, I mean, there's a number of different aspects. It's about how bus lanes and all of that. I'm not going to go into those technical details, but people have raised, and all I'm saying is, would it be appropriate for our engineers to actually say, look, we're going to spend a few weeks listening and see whether we can include those into the design or address those in the design?
The same question.
Okay.
It's the same question.
Okay.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
let's move on.
I just find it really hard to believe that those issues haven't been properly looked at on the plan, to be honest with you. Yeah, I just think we need to get moving. People are tired, people are sick and tired of these things going on for ages and ages. We need to get moving. And that's all I have to say on the issue.
Cool. Councillor Rush.
Thanks, Luke. Luke, Students for Climate Solutions Incorporated, which I think was supported by Gen Zero, recently lost a judicial review case against the Minister of Energy. Are they a privileged group?
That's not right. You don't have to answer that if you don't want to, because it's not actually relevant to what we're talking about here today.
Well, Luke was describing the other people who exercise their rights as privileged.
I'm sorry, I don't, yeah, I'm not going to speak on that.
You don't have to answer that, Luke. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about here today. Did you have any other questions? No? Okay, I'll ask another question. I note in some people's oppositions to the cycleway that about the fact that it's ending in court cases, and that's a reason that we should delay the rollout. Do you think Gen Zero or other groups like that would also take the council to court if it wasn't true to its climate commitments and goals?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, definitely. It needs someone to step up, and yeah, for sure.
Awesome. I think that's the end of our questions today. Thank you for joining us, Luke. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Next up, we've got Aaron Graham joining us. Kia ora, Aaron. So you've got 5 minutes to speak to your submission today, and just leave any time for questions at the end if you wanted to.
Sure. Look, yeah, I am opposed to this, and I think that one of the biggest issues is that you guys are really not meeting anything like consultation. I mean, you look at this and you make claims that 60% of Wellington Newtonians support this, but actually you had 1,900 responses. Now that's a tiny, ridiculous minority of people to be surveyed in the first place. And then you're extrapolating that into the population of Wellington, which is what, 400,000 people? I don't know exactly what the number is, but it's a incredibly small sample to then make these sort of judgments on and make claims against. I think, you know, if you really want to go to this level of interrupting the infrastructure of Wellington, you should be looking at having actual votes on this. You should be asking at the vote to have a referendum. Do people in Wellington who actually vote support this? You know, how about some real answers instead of consulting all these specialist groups like the Cyclists? Really good at responding. They've got a really tight network of people on Facebook who get together as soon as you guys put out a consultation, which you share with them because you're very good at touching on all the little groups. But actually, the overall number is totally insignificant, and the results just don't make sense. And there's a huge amount of people who do not agree, which you guys seem very happy to just iron over and ignore. The whole concept of making things better for everyone. I mean, your own statistics show that actually it's a small minority of people overall who use cycleways or walk to work. I mean, that's not in doubt. It is the minority. The majority do not. But then you claim that the majority support it, when actually I don't think your numbers match that at all. I think it's a very deliberate way of consulting to the people you want to hear from and not taking it out to the other people who don't agree with you. Obviously, there's a constant ignoring of the fact that when population grows, well, there will be more cyclists, and as buildings get more dense in the city, there will be more people who walk, which is all great. But there'll also be more people trying to use vehicles. And for all the people who are very woke and get their shopping delivered so they don't have to have a car and, you know, this, that, and the other, that's more trucks, that's more couriers, that's more people coming. When you live in a high-rise building, that's more plumbers, that's more electricians, that's more people supporting that lifestyle, which seems to be completely ignored in your discussion on things. It's just going to be some sort of thing where all the people who come to Wellington are all going to be cyclists or walkers, and there's going to be no change. And we already have a constrained environment for people to use vehicles. For buses, for taxis. How many more taxis do we need every time people give up their cars? All these things add to the existing requirement for people to use roads. And roads are super useful. Everyone can use them. Cyclists have been using them for the last 200 odd years, as well as cars, ambulances, buses, Ubers, whatever. And as we change our fleet to electric, which is the most likely way that we're going to make these improvements, all of those vehicles have exactly the same need as ICE cars to go from A to B, taking out major arterial routes to put in not bus lanes so much, but more cycle lanes, which will be used by an incredibly small part of the population compared to the number of journeys that will be affected, whether they're in electric cars or buses or whatever else. Just doesn't make sense. And you guys really need to look at a better way of putting in new infrastructure. Like this, I think these cycle routes should be in the green belt. They should be going through school grounds. They should be going through parks. They should be going through existing gaps in the city where people want to go to. And on secondary roads, perhaps changing things to a more one-way based system where part of a road is lost to a cycleway, but it's replaced by being able to cycle, well, not cycle, being able to drive in a one-way type system through arterial routes which are not affected, where all the vehicles that need to go where they need to go, which will increase over time, can continue to do so. That's all I've really got to say.
Awesome, thank you, Aaron. Any questions?
I'll ask a question. If someone.
Sure, Councillor Rush.
So Aaron, you mentioned that people have been cycling for a couple of hundred years, but I guess the counter to that would be that the level of traffic is quite considerable. and that there's a safety issue. Now, what would you say to those people advocating for more safety on the roads for cyclists?
I'd say it's nonsense. Half of them are riding electric bikes. They can go as fast as cars. In fact, I think the next argument is going to be about who has the right to cycle lanes, because half of them are motorbikes. And it's just nonsense. People have been riding bikes since the beginning of time. You can ride on the road. It is dangerous. Getting out of bed is dangerous. Driving your car is dangerous. Living in a bubble is a nonsense, especially when it costs hundreds of thousands of other people their ability to get across town without issue, so that we can have 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening where people feel safe on their bikes. The rest of the time, those lanes are empty, and you guys know it. They don't get used. It's a total waste of space.
Thanks, Aaron.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron, for your time today and sharing your views with us today. Hope you have an awesome day.
Thanks.
Next up, we've got Stuart Knight. Kia ora, Stuart, you've got 5 minutes to speak your submission, and if you wanted to answer any questions, just leave some time at the end. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My submission is really based around the proposed changes to Kent Terrace and Cambridge Terrace. For the last 4 years, I've been attending a gym on College Street after work from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. during the week and on Saturday mornings. During this 4-year period, my family and I have had some significant personal tragedies that have sadly affected my physical and mental health. I work full time, and we hear from everyone how important managing your mental health is. And some people have mentioned it today. My employer has introduced 2 wellbeing days a year, so this confirms looking after our wellbeing is important. You might ask, what has this got to do with the buses and cycling and the proposals? One thing that has kept me going has been able to attend the facility on College Street. The proposed plan to remove parking spaces along the central medium strip will make it almost impossible for me to find parking in a timely manner after work. There are at times 50 to 70 people use the facility I go to in the evening. Although not everybody drives, but a large number of people do. And having access to parking nearby is critical for them and for me to attend these sessions. This is a great place that connects people and helps promote fitness and well-being. I fully understand the need to make it easier for buses and cyclists to access the city. Present, when you consider a large central island in the middle of Cambridge Terrace, would it not make more sense to at least cost out the repurpose of this area, as you could easily develop this area for bikes to make it safer for them being off the road? From what I've seen at peak times, this area is hardly used. Also, the idea of closing off the turning circles is not a positive decision, and this means more traffic travelling further and adding to congestion in the high traffic areas at peak times. It's counterproductive. It means cars are on the road longer, and this will obviously have an issue towards the climate. The impact on local business has been significant over the last 2 years, and making these changes would mean those who must drive will have less parking spaces at peak times, meaning less revenue. Could mean the closure of business, impacting the council financially. Those people who this plan will affect, the scoping of alternative options should be considered. And I struggle to see how this plan, particularly along Cambridge Terrace, will help traffic flow. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart, for your submission. We've got a bit of time left. If anybody has any questions.
Stuart, can I just ask, you started breaking up a wee bit just as you were sort of like explaining why it was you needed to access the car parks. Can you just maybe go over that again, please?
Yeah, certainly. So I've been attending a gym for 4 years on College Street, and this has helped me, particularly for my well-being. My family has suffered multiple tragedies over the years. I've lost both my parents in 5 week period. My wife had 2 miscarriages, and my wife lost her mother. And this ability for me to attend this facility, it's crucial for my well-being. And having a restriction or removal of parking spaces at the times I need to go to the facility will have a huge impact on myself and a lot of other people that attend that facility.
Thank you, Stuart. Really appreciate you coming and making the time.
Councillor Calvert, did you have a question?
No, I think Councillor Rush actually covered off what I was going to ask. But just one question, Stuart. I mean, because obviously road space is valuable. Do you think it would be helpful if, when we start doing these cycleways, is that we look at more options for off-street parking, and dare I say it, some multi-story car parks?
Yeah, I mean, you can, but you're talking about significant cost to build a multi-story car park, and then there's obviously a significant charge to park there, whereas the parking spaces now, I would say, are relatively cheap. Because I personally need that parking space during the week for up to 2 hours, so it's ideal. And I know that some people may see that as quite selfish, but this ability for me to park close to where I will attend this facility is incredibly important to me and my personal well-being.
Thank you so much, Stuart, for your submission and for your time today.
Thank you very much.
I hope you have some day. Thank you. Now we have Carol Ann joining us, or maybe that's Carol Radford. Kia ora, Carol. You have 5 minutes to share your submission with us today, and if you'd like to, just leave some time at the end for questions.
Yes. Can you see me?
No.
We can't see you, but we can hear
me. You can hear me. Well, that's fine. Thank you so much for allowing me to make the submission and rescheduling. I had a specialist meeting at the same time. Now, I've written it out, so I'm going to read it to you. Is that right?
Yep, just within that 5 minutes.
Okay, all right. I am a born and bred Wellingtonian and have never lived anywhere else. The city is a complete mess in terms of traffic flow, particularly from the motorway exit onto Villian Street down Kent Terrace around the Basin Reserve, the Mount Victoria Tunnel, and through the other way to Newtown. We need a solution to the traffic that creates better flow, not an extension of the cycleway. The new plan to extend cycle lanes defies logic. There is no room to put in a cycleway for much of the proposed route. Besides, the survey conducted by the residents of Island Bay shows that at the very most on a sunny day, there is an average of 47 cyclists using the cycleway. On a rainy day, of which there are many a year in Wellington, there would be significantly less. The amount spent on a very small minority to create hazards for the majority of Wellingtonians baffles me. Wellington has some monumental work needed to bring infrastructure up to date, and any luxury items are not needed at this time. It would be great if there was a considered and well thought out plan to improve traffic flow in and around Wellington. Cars are a necessary part of getting around Wellington, period. I wonder if the Wellington City Council, the committee responsible for these unworkable plans, have considered these points. The terrain of Wellington is not conducive to bicycles, however it is framed. Most of the cities that use bicycles for transport are flat. Also, if you look at cities with successful bike lanes, they have not sacrificed traffic flow for bikes. They have improved roading and allowed traffic to flow on located the bike lanes and located the bike lanes in other areas. If there is to be a cycleway, it should be on less congested streets. It should not interfere with car traffic, as it is pure madness to think that all car drivers are suddenly going to start using bicycles. Parents with children over the age of 3 to 4 who cannot take them on their bike, parents with more than 2 children, working parents that have no time struggling to do drop-off and pickups and make it work on time, parents with after-school activities to get their children across town, elderly people who are mobility challenged. You are discriminating against the elderly and the disabled by taking away car parks and making it harder for them to drive around. There are also tradespeople, delivery people, etc., that have to drive around and could never use a bike. Wellington does not enjoy great weather. I've lived here for 74 years and we are known for our wind. Therefore, there are many days it is simply not practical for people to use bikes. The small businesses up Adelaide Road through to Newtown and around the hospital mostly survived the lockdown of COVID. They struggled and to stay afloat. They provided necessary goods and services for the many people visiting the hospital, and parking is needed for those coming and going. The hardship you are creating for patients, businesses and people in the area is unacceptable. Small businesses are the backbone of New Zealand and can grow into medium-sized businesses and further, providing employment and tenants, all of that. This plan has closed businesses already and is of great concern for the future of people and the community. I'm a ratepayer of many, many years standing and would like to see this plan scrapped and the money squandered already on cycleways be reimbursed by cycle users. My rates need to be used to maintain the infrastructure of Wellington, not, you know, it's not a pretty subject, but namely water and sewerage pipes, expert support where there have been landslides and beautifying the sadly neglected streets of Wellington. We are the capital city after all. My suggestion would be for light rail for public transport. There have been some excellent schemes mooted in the past. Parking buildings, leave Kent and Cambridge terraces alone, and for this committee to listen to older, wiser and practical Wellingtonians and consult entities with a proven track record of achievement, namely Sydney, Melbourne, which are close to us, and they operate very efficiently. Please remember, you are elected to represent the people of Wellington and me, and to manage the city well. And I am disappointed that there have been so many egos on show, and I would hope in the future that you will work towards the end of having Wellington as a wonderful, amazing, vibrant place to live. So that's my little spiel. I've never made an oral submission. I thank you for listening. And if in any way I sell real estate, I have been doing that for 28 plus years. I'm a property manager. I have been a body corporate chair for the wharf officers. I've worked with the council, and I have to say that my dealings with the council in the areas that I have used, which are namely archives, the building inspectors, consents, and if I ever ring in for a land slip or whatever, have been incredibly good. I cannot fault them. So I would like to see some rational thought go into these cycleways and to promote, you know, I'm all for exercise. I have an exercycle in my garage, mainly because the weather, and I live in Newtown, is not appropriate. So that's my spiel. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Carol, for your excellent submission this morning, today. We really appreciated that. Thank you.
Thanks.
So now, councillors, we are at the end of this part of the submissions. However, in the chambers upstairs, they don't have enough members to meet quorum. So we're going to ask that some of our online councillors join into the other Zoom. So I'm going to hand over to Emily to explain that process. Everyone will get the same 45-minute lunch break.
I could just go upstairs.
Hi.
Hi everyone. Emily, are we able to get started with just us four in the office and Councillor Matthews? Is that enough people? Oh, and Councillor Calder? Oh yeah,
Yes,
we should be
yep,
good.
absolutely. We're good to go and we're recording.
Awesome, thank you.
So I start?
No, Jill, sorry, I'm just gonna
That's cool.
in a couple of moments. So yeah, kia ora everyone, welcome back to our Newtown to City Bike and Bus Improvement hearing. So welcome, Jill, nice to see you. So you've got 5 minutes to speak to your submission and leave time at the end if you want to answer any questions.
Kia ora koutou. So the first thing is you guys as councillors have agreed to a strategy of first to zero. And the first goal on that is to reduce your city emissions by 54%. And as I'm sure you're aware, the single biggest source of CO2 emissions in Wellington City is from transport, of which private is a big contributor. Next. You've also got a congestion problem, and EVs aren't going to solve that on their own. And they're often unaffordable for most people. In fact, e-bikes cost a lot less and they're outselling EVs. So getting more people to use active transport and public transport is a much less expensive solution to both congestion and carbon emissions. Next. Key issues from this perspective is if we want more people to use public transport, i.e. buses in this case, they have to be reliable, convenient, and less expensive than driving. They don't actually need to be free, and I've given you a link to a podcast about that. Currently, at the moment, public transport is less expensive probably than driving when all costs are taken into account. But most people perceive it as less convenient and less reliable than jumping in their car. Now, Metlink can only make buses more reliable, apart from having drivers, is if Wellington City Council puts in dedicated bus lanes. In terms of cycling, more people will cycle if it's perceived to be safe. And as most people walk to public transport, this needs to also be safer, easier, and more pleasant. Things like pedestrian crossings being more responsive to pedestrians. I'd like to also add that there is substantial evidence from overseas that shows that retail businesses benefit from cycle lanes and people walking and taking public transport. And as elected councillors, I expect you to make evidence-based decisions. Next. In terms of the plan, I support it with a few tweaks because I believe it will achieve all these kind of objectives you've got. I just want to make a few of my own observations. First of all, there is very little retail or residence on the key roads, and there is alternative parking on side streets. Ambulances are often held up on Main Street because of all the parking. And I spent some time outside the school on one random day, and I can assure you that far more children biked, scooted, and walked to Newtown School than were dropped off. And crossings are currently heavily prioritised to cars, which means as a pedestrian, you have to stand for ages not to get very wet in the rain. Next. So, changes I think are needed to that plan, needs tweaking. First of all, Main Street. For a lot of people on bikes, they come down Main Street. But currently, because of all the parking, you have to go on the pavement if you actually want to get to the green box. Ambulances regularly get stuck, and it's pretty dangerous for kids to cross. In terms of drop-off for the school, there are actually 3 car parks and a drop-off zone right behind St Anne's on Daniel Street, which is in easy walking and safe distance from Newtown School. And in fact, lots of kids walk through St Anne's to get to Newtown School. So you do not need to have a drop-off zone right outside Newtown School. Next. Changes I'd like to see are from Main Street to M Street. It's proposed that some of the car parks are come out. I would like to see all of them. I've cycled along there and I get spat out after the traffic lights into a whole line of traffic, which is not very nice. I'd all like to suggest that in the future, you trial no parking from the whole of Main Street to Constable Street from 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. The John Street intersection is still pretty scary, as after that bus stop and traffic light, you still get spat out into traffic. We need a green lane to the green box. I think that's proposed. And currently there is no signage to tell car drivers that if they want to go straight on, they have to go in the middle lane. And yesterday when I cycled, out of 3 cars that were behind me in the left lane, 2 went straight on instead of turning left. Next, Cambridge Terrace, definitely support the 2-way cycle lane, but please make sure those turning lanes are closed. Otherwise, you're going to have some deaths and serious accidents. I'd also like to see the bus lanes on both sides being 24/7 or at least 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And I'd just like to point out that Gaisley Motors have a vested interest in keeping more people driving. Also, shelter for people crossing at Basin Reserve and the corners of Constable, Ridderford and Main Street in Ridderford, because you get very wet waiting. And just greater prioritisation of people crossing the roads. Oh, and more zebra crossings. So in short, the solution to make it safer, easier and more convenient to use public transport or active transport is to do these things. Any questions? Sure.
Oh, we've actually run out of time for questions, Jill, but thank you. No, it's all good. That was really good, and we appreciated having that PowerPoint presentation. So thank you so much. Hope you have an awesome day. Thanks, Jill. Next up, we've got Darcy Snell. Kia ora, Darcy. You've got 5 minutes to speak to your presentation, and if you want to answer some questions, just leave some time at the end, and we'll let you know in the chat when you're almost out of time. Thank you.
Oh, great. Can you hear me all right? Great, awesome. Kia ora koutou, or Darcy Snell, taku ingoa. I moved to Wellington City almost 7 years ago and consider this one of the best decisions I've ever made. I love the city's rich and vibrant culture, its wide-ranging professional opportunities, and of course, the amazing people that live here. Living in Wellington has helped me discover new passions I didn't know if I had, one of which is riding bicycles. So I've been cycling around Wellington for almost 5 years now. I love getting around by bicycle so much that I don't own any other kind of vehicle and really travel by any other means. I am a confident and able-bodied cyclist and recognize that this is quite a privileged position for sure. But I'm also a very defensive road user. Since I started getting around by bicycle in Wellington City, I've been hit by a motor vehicle 5 times through no fault on my part. Whilst I've been lucky to avoid a trip to the hospital, I'm unfortunately quite familiar with the feeling of being sprawled out across the tarmac and grated on the hard surface of the road after being hit by a motor vehicle, and wish that none of you ever have to experience this. Whilst there are a variety of reasons that I support the proposed changes, I'd mostly like to leave my house on my bicycle and not expect to get hit, which is not the case at the moment. I think everyone deserves safer streets, and I think especially vulnerable road users, such as people on bicycles, those on the footpath, especially so, should be protected from those that aren't so vulnerable. Happy to take a couple of questions.
Awesome. Have we got any questions? Cool. It sounds like you've been very clear. So thank you so much, Darcy, for sharing with us today. It's been really helpful. Thank you.
No worries. Thanks for listening.
Next up, we've got Marion Layton, who I've seen online. Oh, there you go. Kind of, Marion, you've got 5 minutes to speak to your submission today, and just leave any time at the end for questions if you'd like to.
Okay, kia ora everyone. Here we go again, discussing transport around the city. Thank you again for hearing from so many people. We can see that this is a really engaged process. I was very impressed when I saw both lists of speakers. Thank you very much, and staff, for listening to us. I, as usual, come here as a doctor. I come here thinking about the health benefits. You've heard from a lot of people around the nitty-bitty changes that could or couldn't be made to the cycle lane, and a lot of people with their own interests around their businesses or their where their premises are, or their personal need for parking, particularly on Ridderford Street and some of the rest of the cycle lane. And I know that you do think really carefully about the greater good. and you think carefully about making decisions that are going to benefit Wellingtonians for the future, for the long haul, and that you know that Wellington is not a city that can just stay as it's always has been and as it was. We're a growing city. We're going to have more people moving in. It is the young people, dare I say, of this city that are the thing that keep it vibrant, and then put on all the things that make the rest of us who are getting a bit more long in the tooth think, yeah, this is a great place to live. It's got the vibe that I want to be at. And those people are telling you really clearly that they want safe transport to be able to get around. From a health perspective, I did have a meeting with the Cancer Society. I've had 2 meetings with them, in fact, about where parking and the like has been raised. And I did have to say, I think we both do have to agree that prevention of cancer by people taking exercise and actively transporting themselves is just as important as treatment of cancer, for which the declared need to have parking spots on the road is for. And I think that you must keep really focused on the fact it is the hospital's responsibility to provide parking for people who need to use the hospital. It is not the council's responsibility. You don't provide it for anyone else specifically, and you can liaise with the hospital about how they can do that. Why aren't they making short-term parking available for people who are attending radiotherapy? Why aren't they making parking for patients a priority over parking for staff who travel only during 8 till 6 Monday to Friday? And I do appreciate that when they try and make those changes, there will be resistance from staff as well, because everybody wants to keep the status quo when they are used to being able to, in their car, go to the places that they want to go, and nobody likes change. We've heard from a number of cyclists who themselves have had safety concerns. They've had injuries, they've been doored on that street because of the parked cars. And while people have talked, I listened to the Ronald Mcdonald presentation, for instance, about how difficult it is for some of their families to cross that road. Those things can be mitigated with all sorts of other ways, and certainly don't need the road to go back to the way it was. Many Ronald McDonald houses around the world provide no parking at all on site. Most of them tell their families that they need to park on the hospital site. Because places have had some parking in the past or relied on free council parking in the past, doesn't mean that that's going to be something they're always going to be able to have. And other changes are going to come along that are going to make their business have to adapt and grow and find other ways of making things safe and pleasant for everyone to be able to use it. But this isn't a zero-sum game, because some people are getting this appearance of some people getting something better that other people are going to lose out. There are lots of ways in which we can make this work for everyone. And the reason that I really want to support these cycleways is so that we have less ill health going forward, and we have a hospital that can actually function, and then we have a healthcare workforce that's got the time to look after all these people, rather than being completely swamped under the tsunami of non-communicable diseases and cancers that are coming our way. Thank you. I think we might have 30 seconds for questions.
Kia ora, Marion, thank you for that submission. Does anybody have a quick question? Oh, Councillor Rush got a quick one.
Yeah, Marion, one of the things that elections upon us, and we're getting advocacy about reduced sports field fees. And I just noticed that you're a great advocate for cycling because of the health benefits, but you don't seem to advocate for other types of activity, which, we could be giving free gym memberships, for example. I mean, can you help me understand why that is?
Yep. So, Sean, I'm sure you're a university educated chap. You know how to look at the literature and the evidence. There is significant evidence that the main exercise that prevents ill health is commuting. It's your incidental exercise that you do during the day. It's your commuting, getting to schools, getting to the shops. And interestingly, recreational exercise, playing sports on a Saturday morning, going to the gym, has way less impact on your overall health than the daily active commute does. So that trumps it by miles. So it's walking, cycling, otherwise getting to work or to school or to the shops and all of those things in an active way and not in the car that is the biggest impact on your health and on your diabetes and heart disease and cancer risk. I'm afraid going to the gym doesn't cut it. Sorry. And I can send you those papers if you like, but they are publicly available.
Thank you.
Send them through. That'd be great.
Thank you, Marion, for your submission and for your time today. Thank you. We are going to move on to Peter Stephen. Kia ora, Peter, you've got 5 minutes to share your submission with us today. And if you want to leave some time for questions at the end, you're more than welcome to.
Sweet, thank you. First, I just want to ask Sean, where's my free gym membership? I would love one of those. If you can hook me up, that'd be great. You've got my contact details, surely. Anyway, oh, shit, sorry. I live in Pūroro with my partner. We share a vehicle. We have a van that we drive when we need to drive a vehicle somewhere, but most of the time we're riding our bikes. We've got an e-bike that we share between us, and we've also got 2 regular kind of commuter road bikes as well. Riding in and out of Pūroro is pretty shit at the moment, I'm not going to lie. There's way too many parked cars. It's not great, but that's for another consultation, I'm sure. So in general, I'm in strong support of the Cycleways, as it will give many people in Newtown and the wider city the option of fun, safe, healthy, carbon-free travel. I think that once it's complete, the Newtown Cycleway is going to be a huge success, because just from the people I know personally who live in Newtown, I know that through them there's a lot of open-minded young people who are ready for change, and will definitely jump at the opportunity of having a new mode of transport available to them. I firmly agree with the council's road space hierarchy, which prioritizes all forms of movement over the storage of private property, such as cars. And I want to live in a city where my kids can ride a bike to school. And I want to live in a city where future generations will be able to look back and feel like their predecessors actually made an effort to reduce emissions. However, I don't believe that the temporary or transitional approach to the cycleways is working or is a good idea. The current section outside the hospital is tacky, ugly, and unsafe in places. And there isn't any public signage indicating that this isn't the final design, that it is going to get better, because it's not great at the moment. And if people look at that and they think, well, is this it? It's not really creating a good public image of cycleways. And I've also heard that the transitional approach has kind of ruled out the option of a bi-directional cycleway all the way down Redford Street and then Adelaide Road on the eastern side. And I think that's quite a shame if that's true. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard that like things that might move the curb or make too much changes to the road were just ruled out with the transitional approach. And that might have left us with something that's not as good as what a bi-directional cycleway could be, for example. Like I think throwing people into the bus lane or having them go on a painted lane where traffic's literally like merging through their lane, it's not safe and it's not suitable for primary age kids or inexperienced riders. You know, no one should be sharing a lane with a bus. But at the same time, while I think that the current design's not good, it's certainly better than nothing. And I have really enjoyed riding on it when I've been riding to Newtown and beyond. Yeah, so pretty much what I'm saying is that from my personal experience overseas and in New Zealand, I feel that bi-directional cycleways are definitely the golden standard. You can overtake, you just have a lot more space. If you kind of wobble, you're not going to crash into anything. And I think the Cobham Drive and the Point Jerningham cycleways are outstanding examples of this good design. I think change is hard, but I think it would be better to rip the Band-Aid off and just build the cycleways properly the first time. It can't be that hard to design them, so there's not any major flaws. And I think once people see cycleways improving the streetscape, improving the city and making it a nicer place to live, making the streets more beautiful, you know, plant some trees in with the cycleways, do a good job of it, do it once, do it right. I think that'll be much more successful than this transitional approach. Just rip the band-aid off quickly, I'd say, and I think it's going to be a raging success once we have a network of connected cycleways. I think people are really going to appreciate it and give it a go, and yeah, it's going to be great for the city, great for individuals, and great for the climate. And yeah, that's
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much for your submission, and thanks for sharing your views with us today. Much appreciated. We've run out of time for questions, so we're going to move on to Bethany Miller. So kia ora, Bethany. You have got 5 minutes to speak to your submission. If you want to leave some time for questions at the end, feel free to do that.
Kia ora, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. I really want to congratulate you on the aspects of the new cycleway plans. It's really exciting, and it's awesome to see cycling valued in this way. I've been cycling since about 2016, and I teach cycle safety, so I'm very aware of the parts that are more iffy than others, and I'm really excited for those that are less confident or newer than me to have separated cycleways and to be able to feel safer and to be able to start riding, because I have so many friends, those who are part of the Different Spokes Queer Cycling group, those who are younger, or other friends that always when cycling comes up, they say how much they would love to ride, but that they just feel unsafe riding in Wellington. So I'm really excited about the possibilities of getting way more people riding. Regarding the separation and having a safe cycleway, it's most safe if it is fully connected. Otherwise, it suddenly gets dangerous at the most dangerous points when you get to busy intersections. So that's really important. And also avoiding merging as much as possible. Something else though that I want to congratulate is the having 24-hour bus lanes, especially along Adelaide Road. That will help so much for efficiency of buses as well, and that is going to help get everyone around where they need to go, including the hospital, way quicker as we start to have population increase. And that is especially important considering that so many people don't work a 9-to-5 job. So it's pretty outdated to only have bus lanes at peak hours. It's really important to accommodate for everyone. I work contract jobs, so I'm always riding outside of the peak hours, and well, very, very often. And I know so many other people who do. So that will be great for both people on buses and cycling. And something else that I wanted to note was the traffic island that heads into the Basin Reserve. I'm aware of this because I was told by a friend many years ago, and then I was confused, and then I tried it out a few times, and then it made sense. But it would be awesome for those who haven't taken up cycling yet, or who aren't aware of the different cycling routes, that we make that a more major part of the cycle infrastructure with both signage and traffic management, like a proper turning bay to get into that island. So I'm talking about the island at the end of Adelaide Road that heads into the Basin before you head back out onto Cambridge Terrace. That is such a valuable spot, but we could make it so much more valuable if we make it clearer that can be used for cycling, because at the moment there's like tree routes and such a tiny area, and then suddenly you're met with pedestrians, so it's a bit messy, and it would be much better if we make it comfortable for those who are less comfortable with riding. Another good thing that I'm really excited about is valuing both old and young commuters. So I go on a lot of rides with children and other younger people, and I think it's really great that they're going to be able to commute more easily to all of the schools along that connection. So we're talking about Wellington East Girls College, where I went to high school, St Mark's, Wellington College, Newtown School, all the schools along there. It's going to be helping them out and creating a really great cycling culture from a younger age, which is awesome. And I will close with just a great reminder always that we want to make the cycleways comfortable and beautiful and safe.
Kia ora, Bethany, thank you so much for your submission today. We've just about got to that 5 minutes, so yeah, thank you and have a really great rest of your day.
Thank you. Taki te.
No worries. Taki te. Next we've got Catherine Whitehead, and I can see you're joined by Ben and Siobhan. Kia ora, Catherine, you've got 5 minutes to speak to your submission today, and just leave any time for questions at the end if you want to.
Hello, so Ben is not with me. Ben is my fiance. This is my daughter Siobhan. She doesn't want to have a nap. So I am here as for cycling, but some of the proposed changes is I feel are going to be of detriment to certain people. I am not speaking on behalf of an organisation, but I do work for the DHB. So I'm also mindful that I work around like at the hospital. So a few of my concerns is one, parking accessibility for those who need it. With the changes in Newtown, really big thing that I've noted, sometimes I actually need to use the car. Cycling for me with a young infant is not really an option. I can't put her in a cycle or on a bike or in anything to actually cycle. And for me, again, it's a little bit of a safety thing. I wouldn't want to cycle with her. Anywhere I go, she goes too. We live in Island Bay, so I tend to take the bus quite a bit. One of the issues around Newtown with the amount of parking that was removed around the hospital is there is not enough longer timed parking. There is a lot of 30-minute parks, and 30 minutes to do things is not long enough. I've got an infant, I can get her out of the car, do a 5-minute walk and get back to the car in half an hour. If she needs a bottle or a nappy change or anything like that, it becomes a problem. The other thing I wanted to bring up, so a few weeks ago, Ben needed surgery, emergency surgery. I needed to pick him up from the hospital. Again, the amount of parking that's been removed around the hospital, the parking at the hospital is for public use. I couldn't get a car park to pick him up post-surgery. I was required to go in and get him from the hospital, and there was no parking for me. That is a bit of I think that's a problem. It is causing patient accessibility issues, in my view, at the hospital when patients really need the parks. Also, with regards to removing the amount of parking along Cambridge Terrace, there is a lot of businesses along that stretch. That is going to have an impact. People go there. I sometimes park on that strip. Admittedly, I tend to not use that strip because it's a hotspot for having issues getting her in and out of the car and things. But before I had Siobhan, I did use that. Removing all of it is going to congest issues around that area. With regards to the 24-hour bus lanes, I drove to the hospital on Monday. It was about 4 o'clock. There was so much traffic outside the hospital. It was really bad, really bad. And people are going to simply go into the bus lane to get to where they need to go, even though they're going to get a fine for it. The other thing I brought up, obviously I don't have a school-age child yet, but the parking outside, the proposed removal of car parks outside Newtown Primary School, that area in the afternoon, parents picking up and dropping off their children, it's going to cause problem. I can foresee it causing massive issues. It's going to potentially cause some safety issues with parents having to park illegally to go in and pick up their children from school. That could create issues for cyclists. My uncle is actually a cyclist, so I think yep, we need to make things a bit safer for cyclists, but everyone needs to be kept in mind when that happens. And some of the changes are forgetting about some people. Like for me, a few months ago, I was heavily pregnant. And now the loading zone outside the obstetric clinic has been removed. One suggestion to make things a little bit safer at that pedestrian crossing at the hospital, there needs to be bike lights, because for cyclists, I actually spoke to a cyclist, they said trying to see those traffic lights is a problem. So the bike lights at a more appropriate level. And that's what I'm wanting to say.
Awesome, thank you so much, Catherine. You've basically reached the end of that 5 minutes, but thank you so much, and we really appreciate hearing your perspective today. So thank you. Bye, Siobhan.
Bye, Siobhan. Very well behaved.
She decided to draw on her face.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah, she actually has. She's got blue all over her face now.
Watching, I was waiting to tell you.
No, that's all right. I'll just wipe it off. It's a normal ballpoint pen. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
I saw this pacifier come out.
Cool. So we're just going to wait for Darren Young to connect, and
I could have asked my question.
You will.
Don't want me to.
So I'm just going to wait for Darren to connect to their audio, and then I'll. Got a Darren.
Darren's done the opposite. He's done 9:55 in the afternoon.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you. You've got 5 minutes to speak to your submission, and just leave some time at the end for questions if you wanted to.
Yeah, fine, thank you. Good afternoon. I hope you've had a good day. I'm not going to speak about car parks. You've probably heard enough about that today. I'm a passionate cyclist. I've biked all over Wellington the last 20 years. I live in Vogeltown. I don't bike this route a lot. I have in the past, but I mainly bike. Can you still hear me?
Yep, we can.
I just can't see you guys, so for some reason. So I bike Tasman Street and Tory Street and have done for 20 years. But I walk this route a lot with my son, who has autism and has dyspraxia, so he will never be able to ride a bike, but he loves walking. So we walk this route a lot to get down to the War Memorial Park. And I just have some concerns walking it, but I've had 2 bad accidents v cars, one head-on on Brooklyn Hill, and then 12 months later in Tawa, where I spent about 20 minutes unconscious, multiple injuries, but survived, which was good. So I look at design, and there was a couple of things with the design on this particular section from down to the basin from the hospital that I wanted to talk about today mainly. One, when we've been out walking, is there was no sort of provision for the waste collectors. So there's a rubbish truck that goes around every week that parks in the cycle lane. I know cyclists complained about it, but the poor guys have got nowhere else to park. And obviously they deserve to get home safely as well. So that's maybe something to think about in the future with designs. But the main thing I wanted to talk about was the north end of Adelaide Road with the basin. Now, you're proposing to put a shared path around the corner there into Rugby Street, just past Mcdonald's. This is just simply unacceptable. It's very narrow. It's busy with pedestrians. It's a crossing point exactly where pedestrians want to cross the road, or exactly where cyclists want to cycle around the corner. And Waka Kotahi's guidance actually says retrofitting an existing footpath for a shared use may reduce the level of service and safety for pedestrians. And that's exactly a case in point here. If you could put a shared path you couldn't put a shared path in a worse place than here. So that needs to be revised. And I'm surprised it wasn't picked up in the safety audit, to be honest. I guess they're looking more like cycle safety and that. So from a pedestrian point of view, it's just unacceptable. Now we have bad users of every form of transport, whether it's driving, cycling, or pedestrians. And I just want to highlight, obviously, we've had a pedestrian knocked over in Island Bay, which we walk down there a lot as well on the footpath by a cyclist. We've nearly been knocked over by a cyclist. That's a minority of people and not reflective of the cycling community, but it can happen. So that's another reason why this design at Rugby Street in Adelaide shouldn't go ahead. And the other thing I'd just like to highlight is the injuries of cyclists v pedestrians cycling at 20 kilometres an hour. There was an incident in Island Bay in 2017, Linda Gibson, and her injuries, she was hit by a cyclist. She wasn't at fault, but this is just to highlight the injuries from a cyclist v pedestrian accident. And she had a broken jaw, this is a pedestrian, a broken jaw, a broken cheekbone and nose, 3 teeth knocked out, knocked unconscious, and multiple plastic surgeries to her lip. And the cyclist, he also didn't come off good. He had a broken shoulder and hip injury. So that's the main things I want to discuss today. Just the shared path is not a goer at all and should be revisited. And I'm sure Living Street's Aotearoa or Mike Mellor, if he's speaking, will be sort of highlighting those things as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren, for your submission and your time today. I'm not sure how much time we've got left, Emily. Oh, 35 seconds, okay. Does anyone have a quick question?
Very quickly, Darren, is there a solution that you have in mind for that shared path, something else that we can be looking at?
Well, obviously cyclists, if they're going around to Rugby Street from Adelaide, need to get around the corner. Now, obviously, it will involve spending probably more money. There's obviously a lamppost there. The traffic light signal posts make it about 1.5 metres at the corner. You would probably need to adjust the traffic island in the middle. I know you're taking out a lane turning south into Adelaide coming from the basin, so that could be moved over. But that would obviously cost more money. But I'm more of the essence of having been struck by vehicles and lucky to survive, that you do things once and do it properly, and safety is priority, even if it takes more time and money. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darren, for sharing your submission with us today. Much appreciated. Have a great day.
Thanks for your time. Bye.
And finally, for our session, we've got Dave Shumack. Kia ora, Dave. You've got 10 minutes, I think. Is it 5 or 10 minutes, Emily?
I think we've got you as an individual, so you'll have 5 minutes.
Cool. So you've got 5 minutes, Dave, to speak your submission, and just leave any time at the end if you'd like for questions. Thank you.
Yeah, that's plenty. Thank you. How are you all doing? This must be quite a full-on day for you all in a room together. Are you doing okay?
Yep, we're doing good. We're loving it.
Beautiful day to be in Wellington.
Beautiful day. Good on you. Look, my submission, I don't have anything specific here in terms of the plans. Like, I have a firm belief that, how do I say this? Like, too much consultation just waters down good ideas, you know, and like, I really trust you in terms of the work and the thinking that's gone into this. And I just want to encourage you to back yourselves, believe in yourselves, be bold, and because I really believe you're doing the right things. If I think about the last speaker, I'm not discrediting him at all, but no one gets anything right the first time. It's completely impossible, you know, like the only way to improve is to do stuff and then iterate and iterate and iterate. I was lucky enough to work for an e-bike startup the last 6 years or 7 years. We were in Amsterdam for 5 years of that, and in the last 2 years we're here in New Zealand. That company, you know, we grew from, I joined as the 19th person and left as the 1000th person. We had this crazy growth. And what I saw at the start, I thought that we had to convince people and cities around the world to improve cycling and to pave bike lanes, etc. And we didn't have any money, so we were never going to be able to do that. But what we quickly saw is that it's happening, you know, like in New York, in the 6 years that I was there, it went from being a really scary place to ride a bike to being an amazing place. Not everywhere, but, you know, it's improving all the time. And even we've been back in New Zealand 2.5 years, and I've seen that happening in Wellington. Like, more and more people are riding. Of course, they're scared at the start, but they're feeling safer. Drivers are becoming more tolerant. So I have no idea what exactly you should do at which intersection or anything. And like, I shouldn't, you've got enough collective brains between you all, way more than enough to do that. I just wanted to join and say, like, I think you're doing the right things. I know your hearts are in the right place. Just back yourselves and go for it.
Thanks, Dave. We've got Councillor Matthews online has got a question for you.
I have got a question. Thank you for your submission. My question is, it sounds like you've got experience around the world. We kind of hear from people about how things won't work here. They won't work in Wellington like they work in, in another city. So I wonder if you've got some comment about that.
It's just complete bullshit. Like, like, how could it possibly work in New York better than it could work here? Like, New York was way more of a shambles 6 years ago. And yeah, of course, Amsterdam, that's easy to say, yeah, but Amsterdam, but like 60 years ago, they were paving roads everywhere. Bikes were off the road. Like it also, and it didn't happen overnight. It just started there with a decision to make a better city. And then they're still iterating on it all the time. It's not perfect there either. I can't see any reason whatsoever why it can't work here. We just have, it really is about that boldness thing. The only reason it won't work is if we, I don't know, get scared and go halfway, because then we leave ourselves exposed to criticism, and then I don't know, no one's happy. Like, so I don't know. I think you all have to find a way, and it's hard, but find a way to sort of feel that fear and do it anyway.
Awesome. And we've just got a question from Councillor Rush.
Yeah, Dave, I have to confess, New York's not a place I've been to, but I've been to a few others. I guess the thing that I would say and put to you is that the public transport systems in some of those cities are absolutely, outstanding, subway and so forth. And I do wonder, with their financial strength as well, whether they are both more financially equipped to be able to do these interventions, but also there's a really alternative for car drivers to be able to use alternative public transport. Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. Like, I think that's where we have to look at like cycling or walking. There's no one-stop solution. Like, we for sure have to invest in public transport here as well, and get that working better. But I don't know, what I've seen in London, New York, Tokyo, Amsterdam for sure, like just that single thing of getting that cycling infrastructure right, for most people, that allows them to choose a different mode of transport, and if you start nudging in that direction, then it opens up the next ones after that. So yeah, I don't know. I think that I work with a team in Newtown. We have 65 people. We have, 10 that ride a bike right now. Like 30 others in that company could ride a bike to work right now. They're close enough, especially if it's an e-bike. And they're all thinking about it. They're absolutely all thinking about it. And so the changes that you're thinking about here, you will make a mode shift within our tiny little company, a massive mode shift, and the impact that will have on the roads, on safety, on everything is huge. So I hear what you're saying, but I also think we can't wait for public transport to be perfect, because it never will be either. We just have to keep nudging that forward as well.
Great Wellington.
Thanks so much,
Thanks,
Dave. We've really appreciated your submission today and sharing your views with us. So yeah, hope you have an awesome day.
My pleasure. Keep it up. Good luck the rest of the day. And you're all awesome. Thank you.
Thanks heaps.
Thank you. Very inclusive. All.
So everyone, that wraps up our online submissions for our session. So I think we just have to join into the main session now. And yeah, and the Zoom link's in the chat, so feel free to jump into that.
Great sharing. Thanks, Tam.